And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cold War Radio. I am your host, Hutch Bailey Jr., deep down in the broadcast bunker in the city of Pittsburgh. Let's go way up north, where they don't only bobsled in the snow, they bobsled on wheels. Come in, Radio Norway.
Yeah. Good evening, Hutch, and good evening to our lovely audience, and a special shout-out to our Spreaker audience. Yeah, that's right. In the summertime, we have skis on wheels, and we have bobsled on wheels, and they even do ski jumps in the summertime on ceramic tiles, water, and artificial grass.
All right. I'll tell you what we have here in Pittsburgh. We have deck hockey, so they play ice hockey with no ice. But
there you go.
They get into it, though. Ladies and gentlemen, please follow me on Spreaker. The email is hutch@steelcityresistance.com. The Cold War Radio Patron hotline, 412-206-6208. After the live stream, you can always catch this show's podcast all over the interwebs on iHeartRadio, the Cold War Radio app, YouTube with captions if you need them. Cold War Radio has a free app in your app store. You can go download that. On Twitter, use the hashtag Cold War Radio, and you'll instantly get an audience of fellow show audience Twitter followers, Twitter users. Go to steelcityresistance.com. That's the website. Catch the research room. Become a Cold War Radio patron. Subscribe on Subscribestar if you'd like. There's a page where you can contact your representative in D.C. on social media. Can't get any easier than that. If you'd like to write to the show, I'm contemplating ceasing operations, but I'm going to leave it open maybe one more. Well, I think it's by the quarter. It's either a quarter or 6 months, but mine's due, and I haven't gotten any mail in a long time, so we'll let it on for a while, but we might be taking that down. Cold War Radio, P.O. Box 96022, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 15226. You're listening to the Monday Sentinel on Cold War Radio with host Hutch Bailey Jr. and Radio Norway. And here we go, a new week. I want to thank JB and Marlene for upping their game as Cold War Radio patrons. Thank you.
Hey, excellent.
Outstanding. I created a new page at steelcityresistance.com. It's WHBJDB. That's the official call sign, WHDB, WHBJDB, and that suffix is digital broadcast. But there's a new page for our affiliates, so if you like any of the shows that you hear throughout the week, we're up 7 days a week, and we had some really marathon runs on the weekend to test some the 24/7 situation. But all the affiliates' contacts are on that page, and as we add shows or remove them, we will adjust that the same way as the WHBJ show schedule. It's kind of tough just printing a schedule and putting it out there, and it's good forever because everybody does shows at different times and things like that. So I would suggest that you go there to see what's playing next. I try to get in there every day and update it. I'm working 7 days a week on this, so we'd appreciate it if you'd come out on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, as well as your normal listening on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. All right, I got to get into some serious stuff right now. I don't enjoy doing this, and I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible, but it has to be done. This month, February just closed, and all Patreon transactions occurred. And there's times when people's lives change. I certainly understand that, but one of our major patrons had a little financial change and was unable to support the show anymore, which that's fine. I want to thank you, if you're listening, very much for what you've done for us over time. I would never get mad about something like that. I'm humble and thankful for what you've done for us already. But the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is I lost 1/3 of my patronage in a fell swoop. So it's not going to kill us. But ladies and gentlemen, and let me be perfectly clear about what I say next. The people I'm talking to right now are not current patrons. I am not talking to any current patron. you guys could just turn your radio off for 5 minutes if you're already a patron, because I don't want any more from any of you. You've done so well for so long, and I'm not going to beat that horse. You're doing great, and we're going to survive no matter what, even if there's no patrons. But I would rather have nothing than get you guys to give more. I don't want that. I'm talking to the 85, 90% of the rest of the audience. I need some help, ladies and gentlemen, especially if you want a 24/7 station. This is something that's it stunned me, but I'm going to appeal to you, because I know, and I'm also not talking to anybody who cannot afford to help the show, and I will never besmirch anybody that listens to the show for free. That's no problem. We love you all the same. That being said, we're going to have to expand some financial responsibilities if we're going to get to 24/7, because I cannot do this all myself. I'm doing it not all myself. I'm doing most of it myself now, working 7 days a week on it, and I love doing it. And I've got some great co-hosts, and I got Rocky out in the West Coast that's going to pick up 4 hours after midnight to catch the West Coast audience. That'll be good for you out there. And then I told you my goal is to get to 12 hours. Once we get to 12 hours, I could convert that to 24/7, because we'll just replay everything once, just like they do on other stations. So that being said, I need your help. If you could become a patron, I would appreciate it highly. We need to push this thing forward. If you cannot, or even if you can, something equally as valuable is bring one more person to the show. Bring one more different person that's never listened to the show, and that'll help immensely. Any comments, Norway, before I go into the next gloomy thing?
No. I would say that the people that listen to this show regularly, you know what time it is in America, in Europe, in the rest of the world. It is the gathering of the storm. And we're here to bring you the news, the analysis that you don't get anywhere else in the media business. So I would ask everybody that's listening. I mean, if you're supporting some other, pardon my French, BS enterprise, think about moving those money over to us, because we're expanding here, and we're doing that for one reason only, and that is to bring you vital information about the transformation of America, of Europe, and the rest of the world. We live in, there is a Chinese proverb saying, I wish you, it is actually a Chinese curse, and it goes like, I wish you would live in interesting times. And at face value, that sounds like a blessing, but interesting times means times of upheaval, times of unrest, times of war. And we're trying to avoid interesting times by bringing you the news and giving you the tools to act upon the information we give you. Because tomorrow it might be too late. So I pray that everybody listening to this show, seeing the value in this show, bring an extra listener or two into the show. That is a way of donating. And if you can financially, please donate to the show via our Patreon page.
Absolutely, because we don't offer you baseball hats and ballpoint pens and everything else at different levels. Patreon is just a vehicle, and I've said this before, just to have some stability. I can look at Patreon and I can know what I can do next month. You know what I mean? It's not like random donations. I don't have to come out here and beg every night. I really don't like doing that. I don't like talking about this at all. But I do thank everybody that's supported us so far, and I have faith that you'll help us get through this. Now, second point of tonight. On Friday, Jack called in sick, and I didn't really think about it, but over the weekend, Jack resigned from the show. So there was no, according to his message to me, it was eloquent and nice, and there was no mention of disgruntled or anything like that. It just people's lives change. This isn't for everybody, and I told him the same thing that I told History B when her life changed a little bit. I said, "You're always welcome here. You did a great job. There's no bridge burned. I'm not like some people. I appreciate the hard work that Jack put in. Jack's been a long time co-host, and that kind of stunned me. And I'm going to miss him. I hope he stops by in the chat room and doesn't totally leave. But again, I've been doing this a long time, and our lives take turns sometimes that make this happen. For instance, next week I have to go to the hospital, and we're going to be blacked out maybe for a day. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure if I can make it happen or not, but we may be blacked out. Plus, the day before, I can't eat anything, so that's going to be lovely. But anyway, so there we are. We're going to continue Norway. I'll do the show on Wednesday by myself. That's fine for now. Or maybe I'll get a guest host or something like that. We'll figure it out. I just wanted everybody to know, and I absolutely want to stress that, I don't want any current patrons, spending more than you can. You're already carrying the load. 29, I think, people are carrying the load for 300. So, or what do we get? What do we get live listeners a week? Norway, 1,100 or something like that, or a month rather.
Around that, yeah.
So, anyway, that's all I got. Final comments, Norway, and we'll roll on.
Yeah, I started at Cold War Radio 783 days ago, and I think, I'm counting. I got a counter here, so I'm keeping tabs on global warming, presidential elections, and all the other important dates. And I think Jack came in just a few months after me, so I'm really going to miss Jack. He's an independent thinker. He's got a very interesting way of looking at things, which I appreciated a lot.
I did too.
I hope that it isn't any kind of sickness or anything like that that's preventing him from doing this. But whatever it is, Jack, I hope you stop by the show. I hope you call in from time to time just to say hello. I would love that, and God bless you and your beautiful wife. And I hope you're doing good, Jack. So stop by from time to time.
All right, so do I. I feel the same way. We're going to miss him a lot. All right, let's get into the show if we can. I mean, do we need to go take a shower or so? Everybody good?
Well, it's, when you lose, when 1/3 of your Patreon income just comes out of the bottom, that is that can make any guy trying to expand to 24/7 365 radio sweat a lot.
It made me put my army boots on. I'll tell you that. I damn near went for the helmet. I stayed away from the arms room though. But all right.
But I know at least I know our audience in the chat room, in the Spreaker chat room, the best chat room in radio by far. I would say. I know our friends there. I know there are several that will step up to the challenge and become patrons. So I'm not worried at this point.
No, I'm not. And Valerie, yes, it was one person. One person was really carrying the load and really wanted to remain anonymous, so I'm going to honor that. But, yeah, there was one person that was providing almost 1/3 of it all. So God bless you for helping.
God bless you for the job you've done so far.
Definitely. I looked at the grand total and was like, wow, that's faith right there. Of cumulative donations.
Amen.
All right, let's move on to probably one of the most important interviews that did not get covered properly, other than I heard Mike Gallagher on the radio. I don't know if anybody's heard of him. I don't really like him that much, but I like him better than Glenn Beck, and they're on the same time. And I was in my truck, and he pointed this out. I want you to listen to a portion of an interview with former Bill Clinton communications director George Stephanopoulos, who made his money off of ABC. Not much difference between Clinton communications director and ABC pundit, about the same thing. But he's got Jerry Giles Nadler on his program on the weekend. And I'm going to stop it before the bomb drops. But I want you to listen to this guy. And it's just unbelievable to me that we live in such a corrupt country that a major news network would allow a communist from New York City sit there and lie about how they're for the rule of law and the constant. This is sickening. But he dropped the ball. He messed up. He messed up, ladies and gentlemen, and nobody but Mark Gallagher pointed it out. Unless Rush Limbaugh did, but I didn't listen to him because it was Mark Stein, and I didn't want to watch the Mark Stein show. But let's listen to George Stuffing Envelopes and Jerry Giles Nadler.
A violation of seeking to sabotage a fair election would be an impeachable offense.
Who did that, ladies and gentlemen? Hillary Clinton did that.
Is that what you saw?
No, we'll see. I mean, we'll see about that. But we're far from making decisions on that because we have to look into our core job is to protect the rule of law.
All right, let me just lay this out just in case anybody's a little bit not really following this. This guy is the new guy you're going to see every day on television. You're going to see Jerry Giles Nadler and Adam Schiff every single day for the next 2 years, unless they put a stop to this. So this is like his premiere, one of his first interviews on what he's going to do. He's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Judiciary or House Oversight. It doesn't matter. Let's listen.
And there have been no investigations. We've seen real threats to the rule of law from this White House, whether
no investigations.
Personal enrichment. The White House seems to have used its power for personal enrichment.
Clinton Foundation.
In violation of the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution. We've seen abuses of power and obstruction of justice, threats to the Mueller investigation, threats to witnesses. All of these have to be all of these have to be investigated and laid out to the American people.
Let me pick up on that the abuse of power that you lay out. There's one school of thought that sitting president can't be indicted, especially for actions he takes in office. But some of your fellow Democrats already say that the evidence the president has obstructed justice in the Russia investigation is an abuse of power that justifies impeachment. So can there be impeachable offenses like that that are not crimes?
Oh, sure. Crimes and impeachable offenses are two different things. There can be crimes that are not impeachable offenses and impeachable offenses that are not crimes. They're just two different tests. But we have...
Now, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, but isn't the criteria for an impeachment high crimes and misdemeanors, both which are crimes?
To lay out for the American people, and we can't depend on the Mueller investigation for this. The Mueller investigation, number one, we don't know when it's ending, despite lots of rumors. Number two, it's focused on specific crimes, and we have to focus much more broadly on abuses of power and what I said a moment ago.
Well, the question
and the Justice Department has made clear in the last few weeks that it may hide from the American people the conclusions of the Mueller investigation. We will fight to make...
That's the rules, Jerry. That's the rules. The Attorney General is the one that presents the findings of any special counsel.
Public, but the Justice Department has said that the normal policy that you don't comment on the conduct of people who are not indicted will prevail. And that should normally prevail, but not when you say the president cannot be indicted because he's the president. Well, that turns it into a cover-up.
Let's pick up on that, because the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, actually spoke out on that this week. Let's take a look.
When we charge somebody with a violation, we need to be prepared to prove it by evidence beyond any reasonable doubt. If we aren't prepared to prove our case beyond a reasonable doubt in court, then we have no business making allegations against American citizens.
So if the report comes back and says we can't indict a sitting president, or we found no evidence of a crime committed by the president, therefore you're not going to see the underlying evidence, what can you do?
Well, first of all, those are two different things. If they say we've seen no evidence of a crime, then they ought to say that and say why, and that's fine. But
would you want the underlying evidence there?
Yes, we do want the underlying evidence. The American people are entitled to know it. And Congress is entitled to know it because it's our job to hold the president accountable. Because it's our job to hold any president accountable. But Rosenstein went much further.
Except a Democrat, right? Or a Muslim.
And Barr did too, because what they're saying is a president cannot be indicted. No matter how much evidence, the president cannot be indicted. And if you then say, because the president cannot be indicted, you're not going to give the evidence of his crimes, if any, to the public, you're saying the president cannot be held accountable.
So you'll sue in that case?
We will subpoena. We will do whatever we have to do.
Back in 1974, the House committees were able to get access to the grand jury evidence against Richard Nixon. Can you get that evidence in this case?
Maybe. Our lawyers we will do everything we can to get that evidence. We'll do everything we can to get whatever evidence. We are starting this investigation. We will, tomorrow, we will be issuing document requests to over 60 different people and individuals from the White House to the Department of Justice, Donald Trump Jr., Alan Weisselberg, to begin the investigations, to present the case to American people about obstruction of justice, corruption, and abuse of power.
So that would include John Kelly, the former chief of staff, Don McGahn, the former White House counsel?
I would imagine. I mean, I don't have the list in front of me, but we will be releasing the list tomorrow of over 60.
81 names.
Entities, people, etc.
How about if Robert Mueller comes back and says definitively, we find no collusion by President Trump? Is that a conclusion you'll accept?
Well, we'd want to see the evidence behind that and see the validity of that, and we could agree or disagree. But this investigation goes far beyond collusion. We've seen all the democratic norms that we depend on for democratic government attacked by the administration. We've seen attacks on the freedom of the press, the press called the enemy of the people. We've seen attacks on the Department of Justice, attacks on the FBI, attacks on judges. All of these to liberty and to the proper functioning of government and to our constitutional system. All of this has to be looked at, and the facts laid out for the American people.
Do you think the president obstructed justice?
Yes, I do. It's very clear that the president obstructed justice. It's very clear. 1,100 times he referred to the Mueller investigation as a witch hunt. He tried to protect Flynn from being investigated by the FBI. He fired Comey in order to stop the Russian thing, as he told news. He's dangled part. He's threatened. He's intimidated witnesses in public.
If that's
all right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last 30 seconds or so. I want you to listen very carefully as Jerry Giles Nadler lets the cat out of the bag, and they should use this in court.
The case, then, is the decision not to pursue impeachment right now simply political, if you believe he obstructed justice?
No, we have to do the investigations and get all this. We do not now have the evidence all sorted out and everything to do an impeachment. Before you impeach somebody, you have to persuade the American public that it ought to happen. You have to persuade enough of the opposition party voters or the Trump voters that you're not just trying to.
It's a very high bar.
Yeah. It is a very high bar. That you're not just trying to steal to reverse the results of the last election. We may or may not get there.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen?
Unbelievable.
Turn over the results of the last election. Steal it. I mean, he's got to be getting beat up back behind the cloakroom somewhere. I mean, this guy blew it.
Yeah, steal the last election and then convince the people of their own party that wasn't the case.
Unreal.
That is one point. The other point I really noticed in this interview is he says that the scope of the investigation went far beyond collusion. You think?
Unreal. I mean, the Mueller investigation was too narrow. We're going to investigate Trump's high school teachers. They were doing that. Did you see that? They were doing that. They were trying to get his SAT tests.
Yeah, it is. We found, I mean, Mueller can come and say that we found no crimes, and the Democratic Party will just answer, so we'll just make up some.
That's it. It's absolutely crazy. Listen, I know there's people that listen to this show that are connected to the administration. Let me suggest something that I actually said it before Joe DeGeneva did, but I heard him say it tonight, and he's right.
The fifth?
Yeah, President Trump, you should tell all your people. First of all, if you're just an American citizen and you don't work for the government, tell Congress to kiss your ass. Don't say anything. You can plead the fifth legally. Just don't say a damn word. This is a perjury trap. This is a fishing expedition. And nobody, even you, President Trump, none of you should say anything. The hell with them. You know it's not a fair body. Your Republicans are frickin' Benedict Arnolds. Rand Paul, you need to get out of the Senate. I had enough of these people. I'm starting to get mad, Norway.
Yeah, me too. I mean, what we've seen from the Republican representatives of the people, I know since the 2016 election cycle, I have come to, well, I knew a few Americans before that, but I've come to know so many Americans. I love you all guys. You write to me, you share your thoughts, you share things you find on the internet. You're absolutely awesome. I've learned so much about America since the 2016 election cycle, and I'm horrified. I knew Reagan, you know, the Reagan era, what was going on in America. You had the media, you know, the communists in the media, the usual bullshit they were serving up. That was one thing. But what you see today is a revolution. It's a communist revolution taking place in America. And the only one that's fighting is Trump and his administration and a few Trumpers here and there. And Judicial Watch, a private organization. The rest of the country is asleep, more or less. And I know there are good Americans out there. You need to visit stillcityresistance.com, go into the 2 pages that has the numbers and contact information to your House and your Senate. You need to get on the horn of these guys and tell them no more money to you, Buster, and no more support to you unless you stop this move.
That's right. Now let's go to New York City, and let's welcome Mona to the program. Good evening, Mona. How are you?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Got home safe,
Mona.
I take it?
Huh?
Got home safe, I take it?
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to share that you weren't able to in the interviews? What was the overall feeling at CPAC this year? Was it better, worse? How was it?
It was much better than it was last year. I think, conservatives are waking up and realizing that just because, like last year, we had the presidency, we had the Congress, we had the Senate, that everything could just be fine and dandy. But we have to continue fighting, and I think they're realizing it now. The one upset that I can say about CPAC, and I think Michelle Mawson mentioned it because I couldn't see her speech, but I overheard it, that there was only one panel about immigration and border security. And This is an issue that's going to take over 2020. And this is something that can help us win 2020. And there should have been more panels, more discussions about that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And she had a really good speech. We played it on WHBJ, and she said about Van Jones, you don't need to bring him in when you come on a panel for criminal justice reform. I've been writing about it for 20 years. Come get me. I thought that was a little weird, bringing a self-avowed communist to the stage. That didn't. There's two different motives for criminal justice reform when it comes to the conservative movement and when it comes to Van Jones. But we'll just leave that alone. It seemed like a successful event to me, other than a little bit of a stain with Laura Loomer. There's always that stain every year. Every year, it's either Pamela Geller.
Behind me after she got okayed by the volunteers that they checked IDs when they did a really tight security for Pence and Trump, she was right behind me and heading up to the escalator to get Secret Service. And I didn't stay to watch her because a lot of people were like, wanted to take a picture with her, or like a lot of media wanted to talk to her, or vice versa. But by the time I got inside the media row to wait for Trump to speak, it started breaking from some reporters that she got banned. I don't understand that.
Yeah, well, like I said, it happens every year, and it's normally this is the big problem.
But supposedly, according to somebody that said that if she wanted to attend, she had to buy a pass. I think that's not right because you gave her the pass for media.
And she is media. I mean, even if she's reporting something you don't like, she's still media. She's got a degree in journalism, and she worked for. Go ahead, Norway.
I mean, she broke the Keith Ellison abuse story. Remember that? I mean, that was huge news. I mean, and she has been such a Trump supporter and such a trooper in the field for real journalism, for digging, for investigative journalism. And I think it's absolutely disgraceful that the reports that came in was that one of Soros's fringe groups had reported her for harassment, they said. And that was the reason CPAC used for banning her. And it's an absolute disgrace that can happen on a conservative in a conservative venue like this. I'm horrified. I wrote to what's his name?
Matt Schlapp.
Matt Schlapp, yes, and asked for a good explanation on this. Never heard back from him. I mean, it is rhino tactics, and it's got to stop.
Let me shed a little bit of light on this. There's two individuals. One is named Grover Norquist, who used to sit on the board of the American Conservative Union. He was on the board. And the other is Suhail Khan. I think that's Norquist's imam. But you'll note this happens every single year. One year, it was David Horowitz. David Horowitz stood up there, and he told CPAC all about Norquist and all about Suhail Khan as they were in the audience walking around. And he never got invited back, one of the best journalists in America.
Absolutely.
The next year, it was Pamela Geller. Same thing happened with her. It's all the common denominator is always Islam. That's always the thing. And that was the same thing with Loomer. Because, she brings it. She doesn't BS around the bush. Let's move on a little bit here. There's a man, and he's a Trump advisor. His name is Jeff Balaban, an advisor to President Trump. And he's on with Stuart Varney on Fox Business. And he's talking to him, and he starts making some comments about Ilhan Omar. And watch how Varney he just coils up in the corner. He's terrified that a Trump advisor is saying this. And this guy said, look, pound sand. I'm not a Trump advisor. I'm a Jew. Let's listen.
Part of our bread and butter. Ilhan Omar catching heat on Twitter for suggesting that politicians were being forced to pledge allegiance to Israel. New York Congresswoman Nita Lowey responded with this. Lawmakers must be able to decide without prejudice or bigotry. I'm saddened that Representative Omar continues to mischaracterize support for Israel. I urge her to retract this statement and engage in further dialogue with the Jewish community on why these comments are so hurtful. Joining us now, Trump campaign advisor Jeff Balaban. Is there room in the Democrat Party for Ilhan Omar and Jewish voters?
I don't think there's room in any reasonable setting for Ilhan Omar and normal people. I mean, Ilhan Omar, the problem isn't, as Nita Lowey says, that she's expressing herself poorly in a manner of debate. The problem is that her beliefs are deeply rooted in hatred and anti-Semitism. She is a hater. I'm going to say it. She is filth. She has no place in the Congress. She has no place on the Foreign Affairs Committee. It's outrageous that Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, the most powerful Democrat in America, appears on Rolling Stone hand in hand with her smiling this week. It's outrageous.
Jeff, that is a very strong word that you used.
Yes.
You know?
She is a filthy, disgusting hater. So what? She's in Congress. That's the problem. The problem is they have now taken anti-Semitism in its worst, most base, disgusting force, and they've mainstreamed it. And this started when they let Keith Ellison, who was known to be the Nation of Islam spokesman. Nation of Islam is not a normal Islamic group. It is an Islamist, hateful group. It is a group run by Louis Farrakhan, who is a profound hater
Put this
of Jews,
guy in the Supreme Court.
of many other people as well. And they mainstreamed it by allowing him to be the deputy chairman of their party. It's got to stop.
Okay, but you used extremely strong language.
Yes.
Insulting language there, insulting to Ms. Omar. You've used it.
Yes.
I don't hear other Jewish members of Congress saying the same thing. They're not making the same demands, and they're not using the same language.
Absolutely correct. They're still playing politics, and that's why people are beginning to say there's no room for Jews in the Democratic Party. I think the older generation, it's beginning to happen a little bit, but more and more younger and younger Jews realize this is ridiculous. They've had this hegemony. There's like this ghetto of Jewish voters in the Democratic Party, and it's built on them trying to exploit the Jews and make the Jews be afraid of the people who are actually their friends. So when you have Chuck Schumer saying that the Republicans are making Israel a partisan issue, what does that mean? It means you have President Trump, who has moved the embassy to Jerusalem, who stands for Israel at the UN against the anti-Semitism of the UN, who has Jewish grandchildren, and their response is they're the ones who are saying we're going to stand now with the ones who hate us. We're the ones. We're going to bring them into Congress, put them on the Foreign Affairs Committee when they say that Israel has hypnotized the world, that Jews control the world through money, that the Jews have some kind of we're forcing them to pledge allegiance. This is the oldest form of hatred. It is the most violent and vile form of hatred, and it has no room in public discourse.
Do you want your strong words, and you are an advisor of the Trump 2020 campaign,
3 times.
Are you comfortable with using the very, very strong language as an advisor of the Trump campaign?
Listen, I'm using this as a Jew. I'm using it as someone whose family directly feels threatened, but literally threatened, physically threatened in the culture that's being created now by the mainstreaming by the Democrats of these kinds of people. Listen, if someone's going to tell me that they're going to talk to Ilhan Omar and she'll retract it all and apologize, not for her words. She keeps on trying to use these mealy-mouthed apologies for words, and then she doubles down with another anti-Semitic tweet or statement. The problem is she has a belief system, a belief set that Jews are evil and control the world. That is no place in America in public discourse. It's got to go.
All right, Jeff, we hear you loudly and clearly. Thank you very much for being on the show. We appreciate it, sir.
Sure.
Thank you.
Keep your eyes on him, Jeff Balaban. Attention, Matt Schlapp, man. You got to be on one side or the other. We got to get our party the hell off of that side.
Yeah, I think that the Muslim Brotherhood, the terrorist organization, the Muslim Brotherhood, they've had through people like Grover Norquist, they've had and Suhail Khan, they've had way too much influence on the conservatives in America. And they attack the conservatives in America. They attack churches in America daily through their DAWA, their outreach program. And the only reason they're doing it is to subvert the conservative America, because you need to subvert the conservative America in order to take power in America for the Ummah.
Absolutely. And incidentally, I'm trying to find something here. Frank Gaffney had an office in Washington, D.C.
Yep.
And
right.
I'm looking for this here to give you to show you where to go. But there's an excellent college-level course on SteelCityResistance.com in the research room. And I'm trying to find the title of it here. There's a lot of stuff in here. I didn't mess around.
It is
Jihad.
Something.
No, that's judicial.
No.
Anyway, we'll figure it out.
It's,
we'll
get up there. Sharia in America or something like that.
Yeah, it's and it shows how his experience with a shared, where sometimes there's offices and there's a shared common area, like for the printer and the coffee pot and stuff like that. Well, apparently, Frank Gaffney's organization shared an office complex with Grover Norquist. And like he heard things firsthand that put him on this case, and it's something that's Glenn Beck did a little bit of work on it too. It's a shame for Glenn Beck. He did a lot of good work.
It was actually one of the other directors at the Center for Security Policy, which is run by Frank Gaffney, that had the neighboring office to Suhail Khan and the rest of the cadre. And 9/11, he heard, raised voices and heated discussions in the office next door. He climbed up on his desk, lifted the sound muffler plates,
drop ceiling.
Yeah, and listened in on the conversation. And they were debating how to best spin the situation they were in with the president of the United States. And they poured that poison with the honey into the president's ear. And the very next day, he was on television telling the American people, it is not the Muslims per se, it is only a few radicals.
Absolutely.
And with these guys standing behind him.
And I found it in the research room. It is the Muslim Brotherhood in America, a course in 10 parts. So you go there and you can take the course. It's on YouTube in 10 installments. One of them, you'll be shocked. The one that what we're talking about is in the chapter that we're talking about is the infiltration of the GOP by the Muslim Brotherhood, and it primarily focuses on Suhail Khan and Grover Norquist, who, just totally coincidentally is married to a Palestinian woman, but that doesn't matter, a Pakistani or something.
No. That doesn't matter.
No.
I took the course right after it was published, quite a few years ago now. But from what I've learned, from from that course, and from what I see today in America, like venues like CPAC, that course is still smoking hot, and it is a lengthy course. It's 10
installments,
like
10 hours.
But I would urge people, if you're thinking about wasting time on some bullshit program in the weekend, on some of these bullshit TV programs, drop it. Go into steelcityresistance.com, the research room, and look up this fantastic course with Frank Gaffney. You'll learn a ton, and the American reality, the American everyday life that you see around you becomes that much clearer, because Frank Gaffney is explaining in detail to you how far that subversion process has come, especially with Grover Norquist and his tax reform for Americans or something like that. It is a vehicle into conservative America to break conservative America down, and it needs to stop.
And Grover Norquist was always famous for having a pledge that Republicans would have to sign, pledging that they would never raise taxes. Americans for Tax Reform or something like that. Let's shift gears a little bit, because the show notes are officially exploded now. I'm looking at the clock. I love doing this show. I could do it for...
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Mona, I want to shift gears, and I want to ask you something a little bit more along the cultural lines, because that's one of the things that we're going to do with this program. We're going to try. Most of us are kind of older, but we had fun when we were young. I wanted to ask you, did you get a chance... I'm not sure that Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens set this up, but I think they did. There was a party on Thursday night at the Cadillac Lounge, which is directly across the street from the Gaylord. It's like the most convenient place to go if you're there. Anybody who's ever been to CPAC's been to the Gaylord or the Cadillac. But they had a party there, and it sounded pretty interesting. They had Bernie's bread line and everything else. Did you get a chance to go there?
Yeah, I stepped out. I stepped in for a minute. I just missed Donald Trump Jr. What's his name? Crenshaw was there. And then I think I left right after he spoke. And then I think I heard Ted Cruz was there as well.
Yeah, it was it's a pretty great location to do that. And one of the things that I took away from the CPAC, I know a lot of people that don't have a lot of respect for Candace Owens or Charlie Kirk or these young people. And I got to say, from the last time I interviewed Candace Owens to listening to her CPAC speech and some other things, she's come a long way. Mona, your opinion on that?
Yeah, I have nothing bad to say about the girl. I think she's really, trying to start a movement of like getting, minorities into the Republican Party. I think that the older people should not disqualify her or take her words out of context. As we see with the national media saying that she related Hitler to some nationalists and saying it was okay, which was not really what she was saying at all.
Imagine that. That's how they roll, I guess. All right. We all know I want to send our thoughts and prayers to Alabama, to eastern Alabama, rather. They had in Beauregard, Alabama, they had a massive tornado that Trump caused, probably. It was probably Trump. But
yeah,
it was right outside of where I spent a good part of my military career at Fort Benning, Georgia, right outside there. So hopefully we were able to, or they were able to make the necessary connections, and hopefully some of those guys are helping out with the recovery. I know there's a strong Army National Guard brigade right there too, and that's a state, so they'll be able to use that more easily, although it is in Georgia. But you'll never hear this in the corrupt media that we have in the United States. But ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
I'd like to start by sending our love and prayers to the incredible people of Alabama, incredible state, unbelievable people, and everyone affected by the catastrophic storms that struck the Gulf states yesterday. Towns, schools, churches, and homes were devastated by tornadoes of a force like we haven't seen in a long time, historic. Our whole nation mourns for the more than 20 lives and for the heartbroken families they leave behind. I got reports on it this morning, and it was absolute devastation. It was just terrible. You look at the areas affected, and probably nobody made it out of that path. That path was brutal. To the community of Lee County, we grieve by your side, and we pledge our unwavering support to help you rebuild from the very depths of this horrible tragedy. This morning I spoke with Alabama Governor Kay Ivey, a friend of mine, a tremendous governor, tremendous person, and I've directed FEMA to provide immediate assistance to the great state of Alabama. They're in there in full force, and whatever we can do, we're doing. They're already there. They got there last night. It's at times like this, it's more important than ever to be close with the ones we love and to cherish our friends and our family and to unite as one nation.
You know, Norway, the president is really growing into his job like a champion. I mean, I can imagine the minute that he heard of the devastation of this tornado, he was on the phone with the chief of FEMA. I guarantee it.
Absolutely.
I guarantee you.
Yeah, I just quickly, I don't agree with you when you say that he's growing into his role, because this is the Trump I have known since he came on the campaign trail. Well, even before that, he has a really big heart, especially for people in trouble, and he wants to help people. And I think he's doing a fantastic job, and he has done from since day one. So. On that point, I don't agree with you 100%, Touch.
Well, that's fine, but I guess my what I noticed was the difference in, I don't know, his tone. Like for instance, when responding to the emergency in Puerto Rico, it seemed a little bit more not out of his element, but just frantic. And then when I listen to him now, he's calm, cool, and collected, man. He's ready to do anything that has to be done. He's been hit with so much over the last 2 years, it would change anybody. I mean, he just came out there, and there was no huffing and puffing, and that was pure, counseling.
Well, yeah. He's maybe taken on a little bit more statesman role. I think he needs that when
I do too.
When the Democrats have the House. But it doesn't change who he is. And remember, he's also the leader of the free world. He is the ISIS slaughterer. I mean, he had a whole war to run on his hands and not only against ISIS, but also the anti-American media. I can't blame him for, being a little flustered from time to time when you look at the adversities he has to conquer in that swamp.
Mona?
I was going to say, I guarantee you his critics are going to say because Alabama overwhelmingly voted for Trump in
Good
2016, that's the reason why they're getting the funding so quick. They're going to use it to attack Trump.
Good point. They will for sure. I mean, they're really shallow like that. Now, I said Candace Owens was up in her game. I think this is from her. She has a radio show now, and I think this is from her radio show. But let's listen to. I never thought I would play a clip from Roseanne Barr, but I want you to listen to Roseanne Barr because she's changing too. She talks about Kamala Harris.
Oh, come on. This is so unfair.
So you had to work.
I had to
Completely
make
unfair.
it on talent and good looks alone.
It's completely unfair, by the way.
It is.
Yeah, but it's true, and nobody wants to talk about
Kamala Harris, who I call Kama Sutra Harris.
She...
excuse me.
You're...
She... You know what we all know what she did.
I did a Periscope this morning. I was like, she slept her way to the top, and if we're all going to pretend she didn't do that.
She slept her way to the bottom.
Right. If we're all going to pretend she didn't do it, okay, happy 2020 election cycle.
There was a time as a feminist when I was, way back at that bookstore, when it's like, no, we don't do that. We have respect for ourselves, and we stick together. But that all went to hell, too.
Well, I think feminism ultimately needs to be about truth-telling. I'm not into garnering power against men. That's not feminism. Stop calling it feminism. That's some radicalized white women's movement, as I say it. Call it the White Women's March.
Movement. That's what I say, too. Now, I have 2 sons. So this is my, one's 23, one's 40, and I got 5 grandsons. So I have a different view on how women are than a lot of these other types,
Right.
Because I know a hoe when I see one. And I'm telling you, they come from my boys because my boys, I'm their mom and they're, we have a little bit of money. So
Candace, I gotta talk to you first, Candace. You need to come over to the studio and I need to show you how to interview somebody. Nobody wants to hear you. Everybody wanted to hear Roseanne, but we kept hearing you. That's okay though. But Kamala Harris, it's going to be fun. But you know what? It's not going to be Kamala Harris. I'm starting to think it's going to be Joe Biden. I don't know. It's going to be fun. That's all I can say. I can't wait.
I think it is going to be Biden. I think it 100% is going to be Biden. I guarantee you, mark my words, his VP is going to be somebody that we least expected. But it's going to be what the Democrats take out of our playbook, what we did with McCain, by putting a woman into the VP. Because they tried to put a woman into the presidency. Unfortunately, that woman was just not the woman that everybody wanted to say, like, this is the first woman president. But they're going to put a woman as a VP. It could be either Kamala Harris or, I say, Michelle Obama.
That's the one that scares me. Let me ask you both. Let me ask you both a question. And this could be a little divisive, and maybe it's not fair for me to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I feel that we're in the middle of a movement. The president himself has said that several times. And it's not only an American movement, by the way. If you've checked out Hungary and some other Austria and some other countries.
And Italy.
Italy, yeah, and Brazil. You look at the things that are going on. People want their flags back, man. They don't want this globalist stuff. If you could, I'm going to go to Mona first. If you could pick a running mate for President Trump, would it be Vice President Pence or someone else? Mona.
What, for 2020 you're talking about?
Yeah, the person that's going to succeed President Trump after 8 years.
I'd rather keep Pence, because if you switch over to somebody that, even if like the Trump supporters love, it just causes a chaos. And looking at CPAC, the fellow conservative movement loves Pence, and he's like the yin to the yang of Trump. So if you have somebody like Trump, let's say like Chris Christie, like Newt Gingrich, or whoever it may be, even his son for that matter, it won't balance it out. I think Pence balanced it out very well.
Okay, Norway.
And I think we should just keep it.
Yeah, well, I actually tend to agree with Mona. I know and it's like a debate every night in the chat room, our speaker chat room, people that are for and against Pence. And I think that Mona is right. You need to see it as a whole. Of course, if something serious should happen to Trump, Pence would take over. But I think you need to think about this not in the extreme situation, but in the everyday situation. And Trump has Pence has a solid support among the evangelicals, and that is a pretty big voting bloc, an important voting bloc for the moral American.
My problem is not.
I would say if I shouldn't pick Pence, I would have picked Tom Fitton. I would rather see Tom Fitton as the Attorney General, but if he couldn't be that Vice President, definitely.
Now, I have no problem with Pence, other than the fact that Pence would melt under the pressure that Trump's getting. He would not have survived 2 weeks, in my opinion, because his career is politics, unlike the president's. And I'm not concerned about 2020 to 2024. I'm concerned about 2024 and going forward. And if Pence is the vice president for 4 years or for 8, he is going to be the nominee in 2024. And that's where I'm looking at. And so maybe he does like some other presidents have done and keeps Pence until 2022 and then gets Crenshaw as vice president. Or somebody else that doesn't have the long pedigree that keeps you faithful to your pimp, the way Paul Ryan destroyed himself, and so many other Republicans. But all right,
but I think also looking at the opposition here, Michelle Obama, absolutely, I share your concern if she should run. I don't think Kamala Harris would be any challenge. But I would also urge people to have a closer look at Julian Castro. He is a new Obama. He is relatively unknown to the American people as a whole, but he will come out of the shadows like a gunshot when that time comes. So keep an eye out on that.
And don't miss the fact that his last name's Castro.
And he's a radical.
He is a very radical. And he's got a brother, Castro, too. And I would only say, at the risk of being doxed, voxed, and everything else, he looks like a mongoloid to me. I mean, there's something wrong with the shape of his head. I don't know. I'm just saying. When I see him,
I don't care about the shape of his head, but what's in his head is really lethal.
Yeah, he doesn't have a chance. Don't worry. Let's go to Sean in California. Hello, Sean.
Hey, Hutch and everybody else on the team. How you guys doing?
Doing great. What's on your mind?
Well, you guys are going over who would you pick as the VP running mate for Trump.
Oh, boy, you had to call in. Who's yours?
I have to say John Bolton.
Bolton? Okay, Bolton would be Bolton is a great mind and a great national security type guy, but man, they'd murder him. Just for some of the things he said. I like the guy. I do. I would have liked to have been in the room, though, when the president told John Bolton, get us out of Korea, get us out of Syria, and go make that case. I would have loved to see his reaction to that because he's kind of like McCain in a way, man. He never found a war he didn't like. Although I think he's in much better intellectual shape than McCain ever was. But
I never liked McCain.
I did for a while, but not lately. That's for sure. Anything else going on, Sean? What's going on in California?
Well, this is something that I have to go back into my past a little bit that I don't like going into. But we're talking about Islam and all that. It's how it's just really disgusting political ideology. And I got to tell you something about this, one event that I went to when I had Muslim friends. And we were at Six Flags.
Is that past tense? Or what?
Yeah, it's past tense. Past tense. Had. Anyways, so there is this whole entire park rented out for this thing called Ramadan. And I was like, what is that? And it's like, well, we're just not eating for a couple days. I'm like, okay, so we're just going to a park and we're going to ride some rides. Okay, sounds fun. And
no hot sausage stands, no hot dog stands, no hamburgers, nothing.
No, nothing, as far as I saw. I mean, you could still buy some stuff if you wanted to, but, anyways, I saw like thousands and thousands of Muslims, like really just angry, pissed off people. I'm like, I'm really not sure I should be here. I started second guessing myself. Oh man, did I really make the right choice coming here? And sure enough, I was right. I shouldn't have gone there. I was like, uh-oh.
Well,
you should have seen these people.
I have. I have Islamic centers here, and I monitor them constantly. But one of the things, let me say this, because the Muslim population in the world is very large. And just like Democrats in America, there are people, and Norway, I'd be interested in both of you guys, Norway and Mona, your opinion on this. But I think that a lot of these souls are born into something they don't know anything about. There's so many illiterate people in the Muslim world, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, if you look at some of the madrasas, then that's the Salafist Saudi school system that's global. They're madrasas. There's madrasas in America. And the basic tenet of the education is memorizing verses of the Quran as you're getting whipped on your back for missing a chapter. It's really bad. And I think that I don't have a problem with Muslims just because they're born into a Muslim family. I got a problem with practicing Muslims. You either believe that stuff or you don't.
And the Muslim population in the world is between 1.6 billion and 2.02 billion.
On par with China. On par with China, ladies and gentlemen.
On par with China. And most of these people, they're born into Islam. They don't know very much about Islam. So I think now on Friday you had a story about a lumberjack. I think it was in Afghanistan that was killed because he couldn't recite anything from the Quran. He was a Muslim, but he couldn't recite anything from the Quran. So that's an instant death penalty. There are a lot of cultural Muslims that are primed by their imams into a Mecca version of Islam, which is, live peacefully, be, have a high birth number, spread your people around the world, but, don't make much out of it.
Until
you get the command.
And that's opposed to what kind of Islam?
Yeah, you have the other version of Islam, which is the same Islam,
the Medina,
but it's the Mecca, it's the Medina Islam, and the Medina Islam, unlike the Mecca Islam, is the thing that made Islam as successful as it was, because in the beginning in Mecca, Muhammad copied Judaism and Christianity and tried to make his own religion. He wasn't very successful. He had about 120 followers, including his own family. After he was kicked out of Mecca because he made a huge stink about it, he and his band, they robbed caravans between the big trading cities in the area for a number of years until they took Medina. And they took Medina with violence. They had robbed enough caravans to buy weapons, armory, etc. They took Medina. They slaughtered the Jewish population because between Mecca and Medina, Muhammad found out that Jews couldn't be trusted after all. In Mecca, he said the Jews and the Christians, they are people of the book. They are protected under our law. But when he started his jihad, he killed, in a day, he killed the Banu Quraysh tribe, over 800 men. He beheaded personally in one day. And it went on and on. After Islam went to the Medina version of Islam, they became really popular. They had, at Muhammad's death, they had about 120,000
followers. All right, let me cut you off because I know you could talk for hours about this, and we love it. And ladies and gentlemen, where else can you hear radio content like this? Truthful dissertation about Muhammad with his 12-year-old wife Aisha at his side. I mean, this is something. Mona, your comments.
I'll just pass it to Nori. Let him talk about it.
Okay, that works.
Yeah, but how is it? I'm curious about how is Islam spreading in New York, because I've heard some wild rumors about how popular Islam has become the later years.
I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I do not follow this. I do not essentially look at it. This is something that I know there's a lot of reporters out there that cover it. This is not something I want to cover.
That's fine.
Likely to cover.
You don't have to say anymore. That's fine. I got it.
I do national news. I do breaking news. But I'm just letting you guys know from now on. Anything
gotcha.
Muslim things, pass it to Norway.
I got you.
That's fine. Yeah, but Sean brings up a really good point here. You have blatant Islam in your midst in California in huge numbers, in other states in America as well.
Yeah,
and here's the thing about Islam. Like I said, probably a huge majority, I would say probably 70-80% of Muslims are fairly in the Mecca phase. But here's the gist of it. As long as you can't read people's minds, and I mean, lie detectors can easily be fooled. As long as you can't read people's minds, you cannot know which Muslim is in the Mecca phase and which Muslim is in the Jihad Medina phase.
Or I would opine another phase, and that is the Minos, the Muslims in name only. There's a lot of them out there. I mean, there's a ton of them out there, just like there's Christians like that in every other religion. So again, I say, where could you hear anything like this? And incidentally, ladies and gentlemen, the difference between Mecca and Medina, that's just a chronological timeline of the development of Islam, but it continues globally. The trigger point to go from Mecca to Medina, in other words, Muslims like they are in the United States who are, fairly docile and, do go through their day-to-day lives and things. The tipping point, the trigger, is 7% of the population. Once they get more than 7%, you get London and you get Paris and you get all these other countries and these cities in Belgium. You get Germany, Berlin. When they start going over 7%, that's when they feel their oats. All right, we're gonna move on, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna play a clip. I'm gonna
I got one more question.
Okay, step it up. Run out of time.
This has been bothering me for a little while now. You know how you said, what will happen if we ask for a bailout? My state, for example, what happens if we don't get a bailout?
I don't know. It's never happened. I would imagine there would be austerity programs implemented by your governor that would cause riots, probably, especially in the... See, what the Democrats do is they create an entitlement class. In other words, they create ghettos. Who do you think keeps the ghettos ghettos? It's the Democrats, because... And this is why you see them so fervently protecting illegal immigrants, illegal aliens. Illegal immigrants is a misnomer. There's no such thing. You're an illegal alien. If you're an immigrant, it's legal. But illegal aliens are being brought in to replace people, primarily black people, that are figuring it out. Without there's a small percentage of the black vote that if it ever moves back to the Republican Party from which they came, the Democrat Party's over unless they can convince people that we can import all these other peasants, that some, more than half, are not even literate in Spanish, let alone English.
I noticed that.
You know, so
I noticed that because I see some illegal aliens here and there in California, and it's you know, whenever I walk around or something like that, you know, I don't approach them, but you know, whenever I sit at a bus stop, I noticed a few of them, and they're like speaking in gibberish, and it doesn't even sound like Spanish. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What's this guy saying?
All right, I got to move on, Sean. Thanks for calling. Call back anytime.
All right, peace out, Hutch.
All right, so there's Sean from California, ladies and gentlemen, one of our projects.
I would just quickly note a very important point that Paul D. in the chat room brought up, and it is that abrogation means Medina passages supersede Mecca ones where there's a conflict.
But they still quote the Mecca ones.
Oh, yeah, they quote that to the kafirs, to the to the infidels, the kuffar, which is us, the infidels. So we get to hear the rosy Mecca version. They just failed to mention that those passages, they're no longer in effect, and it is actually the bloody jihad version of Medina that actually is in effect.
That's right. I mean, anybody who's ever been in the Army, especially if you were involved with equipment, knows that one of the things that they do is you have a technical manual, and every month or so a change comes out to that technical manual. And you have to take out chapters 3 and 4 and replace them with the change. That's abrogation, ladies and gentlemen. They bring out the original version of the Quran, and they quote something out of it that's been changed since 1979. But Sean Hannity isn't smart enough, and he puts them on there anyway without challenging them. But anyway, that's. I want to go to another subject. Now, I'm going to play a clip for you. Should I tell you what it is first, then let you hear it? Yeah, I better do that. This is a bunch of white femboys with MAGA hats on and white shirts with leashes around their necks, and feminist, leftist women, not the prettiest things you've ever seen, wearing black shirts. I couldn't figure out what it was saying. You can go to steelcityresistance.com and the video clips page, and you'll see this. But they are on leashes on their knees. Men, white men, on their knees with a leash around their neck, with the ugly feminist holding the other end of the leash, moving around on all fours, barking on top of Donald J. Trump's Hollywood star. Let's listen. They're rolling over and on their hands and knees. Good job, everyone. Yeah, I had to bring that. I mean, if this was a video show, I could show you it. But you have to go to steelcityresistance.com. I just had to bring that. I don't know why, but
it's absolute insanity.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, I watched it, and the thought that struck me immediately was soy boys.
Yeah, I'm thinking turn your man card in, man.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I mean, they have the size of grown men, but they're acting like spoiled little 3-year-olds.
They are, absolutely. So go check that out. It's worth it for a little bit of a laugh, but then you'll cry, especially if you're a father of any boys. I'm glad. I'm lucky. I mean, my son's alpha male firefighter. No problem with him. That's my security right there. All right, so some good things going on, Mona. When President Trump went to visit Vietnam, he must have brought some of his economic guys with him because he got a $15 billion Boeing contract while he was there and thousands of jobs to the United States. What a guy. That's not on the news, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of jobs. Maybe it's a little tough coming from after what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez La Cucaracha did to the Long Island city. I mean, wow. So,
yeah, this is Trump, and it's winning, and it's talk about taking a trip to communist Vietnam, meeting with the communist North Koreans, and bringing home a $15 billion Boeing contract and thousands of jobs to the United States. That man is on the job for America 24/7, 365. What a guy. And, you know, when I heard his speech at CPAC, I laughed. So I cracked up completely when he was talking about all his months in the White House. And White House was the best place in the world to get cabin fever.
That was good. And we played it here. As a matter of fact, I had to start. That was the first night that I was going to start WHBJ in the 24/7 mode. And I was going to go from 6 o'clock to midnight. And I had to start that show at like 10 after 6 because I was still recording. I started recording. I didn't download it. I just recorded the audio as it was playing because I wanted to watch it. And it's creeping up to 6 o'clock. I started it like at 4. And it was like longer than 2 hours. It's the longest speech he ever gave. Since he's been.
And it was brilliant.
It was.
From A to Z.
Go ahead, Mona.
No, I was going to say, it was the longest speech ever. That I missed my bus heading back home because of that.
I know.
Because after the speech.
Yeah, I told everybody.
To get back to DC.
How was the security? Well, I was there when he was there, but he wasn't president yet. He was close, but he wasn't.
Wait, no, you were there last year.
That's right. He was president.
Yeah.
That's when they took all the chairs.
Was a little more tighter.
They took everything out into that courtyard. Out there.
Yeah, so security was much tighter. They closed a lot of doors. They shut down parts of CPAC entrance. So the only way you could get through was to go through the hub, then to go around, to go back up the escalator, to go through security.
Yeah, I remember doing that too. That was a pain. So, Mona, just being that you've established yourself as an outstanding traveling reporter, what's on the agenda? What's on the horizon? What's next? What conservative gathering is on your radar? Anything yet, or are we just?
I haven't seen anything yet, but I'll keep you guys posted, and I'll see if it's worth going.
All right, because CPAC is like the Super Bowl for us. Other than the Republican National Convention, we're going to have to go to that.
I wouldn't mind going to the Democrat stuff just to see how they are. And
now that is an idea. That is a brilliant idea. Let's look into that. How about the convention?
Yeah, the convention's in Vegas.
What, the Democrat convention?
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, start saving your shekels.
And I think we have North Carolina.
That's where we're going? Okay. Good deal. All right, let me move on just a little bit more, another of a down note that we have to deal with. Senator Rand Paul has come out and vowed to block the national emergency declaration, and he's going to force the president into a veto. I think this is one of the most childish things. I mean, when you have a guy that claims he's so constitutional, but yet, you know, there are so many unconstitutional things going on the left that he concentrates on something like this. When I saw this coupled with Justin Amash in the House, I've had enough of this Republican Party. I don't know what the straw is going to be that is going to break my back, But my back is starting to hurt, Norway. I had enough of this, and I don't know what to do here.
I feel your pain, Hutch, and I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I understand Rand Paul's. I respect the guy for his stance on fiscal responsibilities in the Senate, but this is grandstanding, and it's stupidity, and it's treason. I mean, he is stabbing the president in the back because he says that Congress hasn't appropriated the money for the border wall, which is absolutely stupid. What he's saying is that, well, I'm just voting with the majority. Hey, the majority in the House is actually Democrat, in case you wondered. And another point here is that closing the border is the best thing you can do for American for the American economy and improving that horrible public spending. I mean, the way they're pouring out money now to illegals is absolutely horrendous, and closing the border is the best thing they could do. But that point obviously has passed Senator Rand Paul, and I'm thinking, is the guy stupid?
I wonder
what is his IQ when it can he's actually fooling his own people on this.
Well, here's the thing.
That's what he's doing.
Here's the thing. His stand is correct. That that all funding constitutionally needs to be initiated from the House of Representatives. That is their power. But we didn't say anything when Obamacare, a huge spending program, was initiated in the Senate, if you recall. A total look the other way of the constitutional requirements. And we also didn't look, and I didn't see Rand Paul up there preaching that presidential candidate Hillary Clinton was not eligible to serve in public office. James Comey came out and told everybody that she deleted government emails. That's a felony. And that the sentence is fines and prison time, but also that you are no longer suitable for public office. But nobody said a damn thing about that. The money that President Trump is going to utilize with his national emergency declaration has already been appropriated by the House and approved by the Senate and signed by the president. It's in the military budget. He is the commander-in-chief of the military. He's not getting any new money. He's using his discretion as commander-in-chief to utilize the military money that's already there to protect this nation. End of story. Rand Paul, you suck, and you should be replaced. That's my opinion on it.
Amen.
All right, so that being said, ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere after the show. The Chief Report is up next. Let me just go over a couple real quick things about that. I'm working with Spreaker. Right now, I can't simulcast WHBJ and Cold War Radio on two different stations because Cold War Radio is a podcast that has to go to iHeartRadio. So instead of losing the whole audience on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I've been piggybacking other shows after this show on the same stream. Rocky, pay attention to this, please, because you're going to get questions. So anything that's on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, you either hear it live or you don't hear it. That's a radio station. That's not a podcast, internet, downloadable thing. That's a radio station on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. On Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, when a show follows after Cold War Radio, I want to give that show the advantage of having all of you people that are listening to Cold War Radio on the line already to maybe listen to their show. So after the show the next day, I will take, let's say it's the Chief Report. What I'm going to do tonight, it's all going to be here. And for, 12 or so hours, you could download it. But what I'm going to do in the morning is I'm going to take that audio file and I'm going to split it. And one's going to be Cold War Radio, and it's going back on the Cold War Radio place where everybody downloads it. And the Chief Report will go on WHBJ, where you can also, that'll be archived. But anything that plays, again, from Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday is just straight 24/7 because it's longer. I can only go 5 hours without shutting down and restarting. And this is in a beta mode, so I might do that. I'm experimenting right now, ladies. I want you to understand that. I'm trying to figure out how to make this work because I've seen so many people fail at it. And so there's a couple things I'm trying to do. And one you've already seen with the culture. I'm trying to add more genres to the station. Because if we don't get young people in here listening to a gaming show, we're never going to get them to listen to us. You know, but if we have it all on one station, how do you think they got communists, ladies and gentlemen? By watching sitcoms. You know, how do you think all these things became normal? Because they were on variety shows and on sitcoms and game shows. Well, give us a chance, man. We're going to fight back. That's for doggone sure.
Hey, y'all, this is your man Roderick, the host of the Black Patriot Show, and you're listening to WHBJ Digital Talk Radio, where we are the media. Keep it locked.
So you can see it's going to mix back and forth, Norway, until we get the perfect blend, and then we'll launch it completely.
You sound like Andrew Breitbart.
I'm listening to Andrew Breitbart.
Politics is downstream from culture, and boy, is that right. And especially, I think that is, it's right among the younger generations here in Norway, but it's especially important in America. And the way the communists have infiltrated the entertainment industry in America seamlessly, it is hats off to them because they've done a fantastic job. It is evil. It is subversive to American ideals and to the very fabric America is made of. But hats off to them. They've done a fantastic job capturing the young generation for communism.
All right, we got about 20 minutes left. Ladies and gentlemen, 412-206-6208. I see Marlene is on the line. Call in. I would especially like you to call in if you have any questions for Mona Salama, our crack reporter that spent 3 days at CPAC. You haven't gotten to talk to her since she's come back. So if you have a question, we'll donate the rest of the show to that. Marlene, Eugene, go ahead.
Oh, hello. Anyhow, I wish I could think of something for Mona, but dang it. Anyway, I just wanted to comment briefly. I put both articles in the chat. The second one I got yesterday or whenever the heck, about our infamous rent control. Yes, we are trying to be like New York City, except we're worse. We can't opt out of it. But yeah, it's official. Oregon has gone down the horrible road of rent control.
Explain that a little bit. Explain that a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to. Basically, what they're saying is that it limits their when you want to increase the rent once a year, you can't go beyond 7% unless, if you're going to go over 7%, you've got to give to everybody that you're raising over 7%. You have to give them proof. In other words, why are you really doing this? Whereas normally with a rent increase notice, you just say it's going from rent A to rent B, and it's going up by X amount of dollars. No big deal. Send it out.
Well, here I can segue that to Mona. Mona, New York City has some. I don't know.
Oh, that's an idea. I'm curious.
They got rent controls and things going on. I remember there was a candidate. The rent is too damn high. Party. Apartments in New York are very expensive. Don't they have rent control there? What's going on in some of your boroughs?
No, they don't have rent control like they used to. You have to be very grandfathered in, you can say. But even landlords are trying to buy you out so you won't have rent control.
Okay.
And if they do have rent control, I know like I have rent control, but like normally like the landlord would try to increase it like $100 extra a year or so, depending. But like tries to keep it in limited view.
What are some of the amounts of rent per month that you've seen in New York? Because some of the ones that I've heard, I initially came across this phenomenon when I was in San Francisco in 1985 when I came back from Korea. I stayed there for about a month. It was February, and a friend of mine lived there, and he was paying, and this is in 1985 dollars, he was spending $500 for a one-room apartment in San Francisco. And to me, at that time, I think I was paying $120.
Well, it depends what part of the city you live. If you live in the borough of Manhattan, there's parts of Manhattan can be $1,800 for one bedroom, up to like $5,000, up to like God knows how long.
Wow.
There's parts of Brooklyn that became gentrified that are the same thing. You know, $2,000 up to like $5,000. It really depends on what area, how accessible it is to transportation, how accessible it is to grocery stores and things like that. But New York City is not as cheap as it used to be. Right.
And what's some of your other points, Marlene?
Okay, go ahead. I was going to give everyone a chance to respond. But anyway, it also prohibits, we can't serve no-cause evictions. In other words, the way it is now, at least in Oregon, if you don't like somebody, you can give them a notice and tell them to vamoose. You know, for the last year or so, it's been, you know, and even after that, it used to be the first year you gave them a 30-day notice to go away, and after the first year, it was a 60-day notice to move if they were causing a problem. This has nothing to do with if they don't pay rent. This is just if you don't like them or they're causing problems and driving all the other tenants crazy. So anyway, now they're saying, oh, no. You prohibit them from serving no-cause evictions after a tenant's first year of occupancy. And I think it's wrong, because what ends up happening, what they don't tell you, and I read in the actual Senate bill, which I don't have with me, it's at the office, they were talking about how you have to give them, get this, 90 days. And I'm like, are you out of your cotton picking mind? I mean, these guys they're ruining our, our rental market in Oregon as bad as it is. Mm-hmm. But it's just making it worse. Making it harder for us because they won't let you do decent rent increases so that you help your owners get a little more money every month. And say somebody's been paying almost nothing in rent, they move out and you want to raise it, they're probably not going to let you do it unless you, sneakily do it. But legally, it's insane. So when I heard this on Fox, it was on Friday, you were playing that, and I just thought, oh boy, I better call in. It'll say a little something about it, because I was shocked that, here's the national news talking about, Oregon.
Well, hey, Marlene, while I have you on here, let me thank you for all that you do for the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Marlene,
you're welcome.
She contacts me all the time, and every time that this transmitter fires up, I can be sure that Marlene's on the other side. Thank you very much for all that.
Yeah, I usually am. It's going to be funny, though, Hutch, is another couple of weeks, something I haven't done in 8 years. My hubby and I are going to take a vacation, but I think I'll still be able to listen.
Oh, we're worldwide. We're worldwide. You can hear us anywhere you go.
Oh, I know. I'm taking my iPad it's got the keyboard and my cell phone and some chargers and stuff. And
chargers, yeah. I know, because your iPad goes dead quite a bit. You got to get that charger.
Oh, no, yeah. It's going to be a little warmer place than Oregon, but just like I say, this is something.
Oh, it sounds like you deserve it after 8 years. So I hope you have a fantastic vacation, and please give my best to your hubby. And thank you for all you do. Like Herb say, you are really one of the star supporters of Cold War Radio, and we love you dearly.
Thank you. I love you guys, too. I love talking to you, Norway, on Twitter. You and I have the greatest conversations. It's wonderful.
Hey, Marlene.
Absolutely.
Marlene.
Yes.
No more up in your game, sweetheart. You're doing fine.
Okay, my friend.
Keep it right
where
it is. All right. Thank you for calling.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, 412-206-6208 if you'd like to be on the program, we got about 15 minutes left in the show. We're going to break a little bit early because I'm going to try to make this like a radio station where we can transition to the next show, and the next show starts at 10 p.m. So the Chief Report is coming up, and you guys just support me with that. We're going to talk our way out of here. Norway, wait, let's take Ken. Let's wait till he signs in, please. Listen for the tone. Here it comes. Almost. Where is it? It's coming. There it is. Let's welcome Ken from King George. Hello, Ken.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
You never came on that fast before, did you?
Yeah, usually I got to wait a little bit, but no big deal. But now, you were talking earlier in the show about, this revolution. Well, I just happened to catch. I didn't get a chance to listen to a whole lot of anything today because we got a new guy at work, and I was kind of running around him and introducing new people. But I did catch a small clip this morning on my way in, listening to his Mornings on the Mall.
WMAL.
They played a small clip. It was either Mornings on the Mall or Chris Plant. Either way, he played a small clip of this Bernie rally, and he's talking. No, this is a political revolution. That we're what the hell are you revolting against?
That's the thing. You listen to these people, and they're telling you that we're in this crisis. We're in this, and if you ever notice, Ken, what they say is it's a crisis for our democracy. Because they keep going back.
Constitutional crisis, yeah.
They keep going back to democracy, though, because they live on this lie that Hillary Clinton got more popular votes than President Trump. I will never believe that, no matter what you show me. I just don't believe that. I was here. I was at the forefront. I saw these people. I saw people in Pittsburgh that have been communists their whole lives and didn't even know it, that came out fervently in support of the president.
Oh, I know. I was up in Johnstown just before the election, and in fact, there was a bunch of people that were working in the little factory that we were actually going to go see President Trump, or at the time, candidate Trump. He was doing another rally in Johnstown that Friday. It was like the last day we were going to be there. And instead of coming in and working on Saturday, we ended up working late Friday, and we didn't get a shit. But there were a handful of people that we all had tickets. We were going to go, but we ended up working late and didn't get a chance to go.
And that's John Murtha territory right there. Let me tell you about Johnstown. I know I had one of my shops that I supervised was in Johnstown. It was actually at the Murtha Airport. And John Murtha in Johnstown is like, what was the KKK guy in Norway and West Virginia?
Robert Byrd.
Robert Byrd. You go down to West Virginia, and Robert Byrd is like the second coming of Christ. And Murtha's the same way in Johnstown. It's starting to fade away now, but back in the day, that's the way it was. Do you have any? You and your wife are veterans of CPAC. Do you have any questions for Mona?
Not really. I wish I would have went this year because it looked like, from what little bit I caught on Saturday, there were some pretty good speakers there and everything. So
I like the party at the Cadillac Ranch, man. I wish I would have went to that.
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
I heard about that today.
I'm still waiting for some video of Mona riding that bull, though.
Mona?
Yeah, that's never going to happen. And if you want to have a quick discussion with my boyfriend, go right ahead, but I don't think he's going to appreciate that.
He's a wise guy. I like him more.
Bring him along. Well, yeah, enough alcohol, you get on that thing.
That's her business. But all right, Ken, thanks for calling, brother.
All right.
Ken from King George, ladies and gentlemen, a good follower of the show, and actually signed up for Patreon tonight. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Anything you guys can do, man. I mean, I'm on the cusp, baby. I'm ready to go. And I lost a co-host, and I lost a third of my money. Come on, guys. We got to make this work. I want to make this 24/7, but we will. 412-206-6208. phone lines are open, especially those of you who would have any questions for Mona. She did a great job, and you guys were able to assist her in what she was doing. Oh, this is a new one. This is what I like. Let me get my pencil and my pen out here.
It's Roy, is it?
Well, British Columbia. Yeah. How about that? Is this Roy Ellsworth?
Yeah, it is Roy from the chat room, I presume.
It's Roy from Steel City Resistance for the last 7 or 8 years. Hello, Roy.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. What's going on?
Well, our government may be falling in the next week or two.
I hear that.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, Trudeau's got some problems.
Oh, by the way, there's another Castro. His name is Trudeau.
How about that?
Yeah.
Now, I was talking about Laura Loomer earlier, and I remember back in the day, you used to really try to get Chris and I, to get Mr. J and I, to follow Rebel Media, and that's where she started.
Yep.
Did you follow her back then?
Did. I followed her back then. She wasn't on very long. She was on for a little while, and then I guess she left or something. I don't know what was behind all that, but she had left.
So what's the outlook post-Trudeau? Do you think that Trudeau is going to survive this with his attorney general? And, the media reports are all over the place, but I'd rather listen to somebody that's there.
Well, let's just say that the CBC and the CTV, which are liberal lights, are actually going after Trudeau for once.
Right. So they're turning on him. So they're turning on him. The people that supported him and got him and his elderly wife elected, now they're turning on him.
Right. 5 cabinet ministers have already left within the last 2 months, resigned. 5
cabinet ministers, that's big.
Yes, that's huge. They're leaving in droves. But the Conservative Party in Canada went left. They became rhinos, and there's a new party that's it's starting to pick up steam, and it's called the People's Party of Canada.
That doesn't sound good, man. That doesn't sound good. The People's Party of Canada.
Trust me.
All right, well, tell us about it.
The Patron is very conservative. He doesn't want to get us into. We want to get out of the UN climate change, period. We want to have lower our capital gains tax, so we wants to get rid of that.
All right, so what else is going on? What's on your mind? You were away for a long time, some years, I see, and now you're back. What's going on?
Well, I've been really busy working and family was having family issues and things. So finally, I'm back on. I'm started doing my own YouTube now.
Okay, I heard that. Rocky was telling me about that. What's going on there?
Yeah. Well, I started talking a little bit about the political that's happening in Canada right now and things like that. But I did watch I did watch CPAC.
All right. How long is your show?
It depends. There's some 15-minute ones there. I have one there. I was on there for a good 45 minutes there. I'm limited to the amount of internet I can have here right now. So
I can understand that because you're like in what'd you have to shoot the other year? A badger or something up there? I remember was harassing your dog and you had to whack him.
A cougar.
Oh man! All right. Well, hey,
my little dog Frederick. There, he's 7 years old now. Hutch.
All right.
He was just barely over 6 months old when that happened.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to look into Roy's YouTube channel. We'll see if that's something that we can play here. And thanks for calling, sir.
Yeah, I just started some of them. So.
All right. Well, let's see if they're ready for prime time. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, just type Roy Ellsworth in the search and you'll find him.
There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Roy Ellsworth from British Columbia, one of our original listeners at Steel City Resistance. Man, it's good to hear him. I love that when people come back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're a little bit on a different timeline. I'm trying to get this right so we can...
I've got a question for Mona.
Okay. Make it quick.
If it's okay.
It is.
It's okay.
Absolutely.
I'm curious to hear what your best takeaway from President Trump's speech at CPAC was.
The free speech and him signing an executive order to stop this.
Free speech? Say that again?
So him signing the executive order to prevent colleges from...
Oh, okay. Little trouble hearing Mona there, but she's talking about the executive order that the president has made or is going to make, forcing colleges to enforce free speech. Imagine that. You have to have a presidential executive order to apply the Constitution to our communist colleges. Damn, that's messed up. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. Mona, any final comments, and how can people get in touch with you?
You can get in touch with me on...
Okay, malfunction at the cell tower with Mona, Norway.
Final comment. I think Mona did a fantastic job at CPAC. I'm really sorry that we lost Jack. I hope you pop in from time to time and say hello. And we'll figure out something for Wednesday's Cold War Radio. In the meantime, I would repeat what Hutch said. I hope you guys can step up and support the show with a few dollars if you can. We really, really need it to get this station on the road so we can broadcast our important messages 24/7, 365. Have a wonderful Monday evening. God bless you all. Radio Norway out.
Thank you, Norway. And you can catch Mona at monasalama.com. I wanted to ask her, I'll ask her next time she's on, she ought to do a fashion show on WHBJ. By God, that'd be a good one. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr., ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Cold War Radio via WHBJ. We'll mix them together pretty soon. You're listening to Jacob Seals, The American Dreamer. I love this song. Go support Jacob Seals. Good stuff. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. everywhere on social media. I want to thank you for letting us into your life for 1 hour. After the break, ladies and gentlemen, it is James Chief, somewhere around Gary, Indiana. Smart guy. And the Chief Report, coming up right after the news. Thanks for listening. If you can help us, patreon.com/CWR. We especially like millionaires. Any millionaire will get special status. Not too special, but special. Thanks, everyone. Don't go anywhere. Chief Report up next. God bless.
Hello, I'm Marion Marshall with the BBC News. One of the most senior ministers in the Liberal government of the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has resigned. Treasury Board Secretary Jane Philpott says she no longer has confidence in the government's handling of a corruption inquiry. Lee Carter reports from Toronto.
The loss of Jane Philpott, a high-profile minister, will be a serious blow to the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. In her resignation letter, Ms Philpott said that she has serious concerns over allegations that government politicians and officials put pressure on a former Attorney General to intervene in a criminal court case involving the giant Canadian construction company SNC-Lavalin. Mr Trudeau has denied any wrongdoing, but the growing scandal has been damaging his government's reputation in an election year.
The Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaidó has returned home in defiance of the threat of arrest to continue his drive to force President Maduro from office. Speaking to cheering crowds in the capital, he announced a new protest march for Saturday. Will Grant is in Caracas.
Arriving at the main airport in Caracas, Juan Guaidó walked into Venezuela through immigration control like any other citizen coming home. In fact, he was travelling in defiance of a Supreme Court travel ban, and the huge crowd waiting for him outside was there to ensure his well-being. Nicolas Maduro insists that Mr Guaidó has acted illegally in declaring himself president and by defying the Supreme Court. He knows, however, that the decision to arrest him would bring him into direct conflict with Brazil, Colombia and, of course, the Trump administration.
The Trump administration says it will allow Americans to file lawsuits against dozens of Cuban companies and other entities that control property seized by Havana after the revolution in 1959. Washington will keep in place a ban on legal action against foreign firms. Cuba's foreign minister condemned the move. Our America's editor Candace Peart reports.
Every US president for decades has suspended every 6 months part of a law which allows Cuban Americans to sue to try to get their property back. This time, crucially, lawsuits will be allowed to be filed for 30 days against many Cuban enterprises linked to the military and intelligence services. The move appears to be aimed at increasing pressure on Cuba and punishing the country for its support for Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro.
The House Judiciary Committee in the US Congress has asked 81 government agencies, individuals and other organisations to submit documents in connection with its investigation into alleged obstruction of justice and other irregularities by President Trump. Among those included in the requests are the President's sons, Donald Jr. and Eric, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. The former Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, is also on the list. World News from the BBC. The French President Emmanuel Macron has outlined his vision for the future of the European Union. In a letter to Europeans, published in 28 newspapers, he sets out wide-ranging plans to overhaul the EU after Britain leaves. Roger Walker reports.
Never since the Second World War has Europe been so essential, yet never has it been in so much danger. That's how President Macron sums up the situation post-Brexit. He says the UK referendum vote symbolised a crisis in which Europe was seen to be failing to respond to its people's needs. He condemns what he labels the lies and irresponsibility of British Leave campaigners, but he acknowledges the power of their message. He says citizens of the EU must now take back control too. His specific reform proposals include a minimum European wage and curbs on internet giants.
The president of the biggest group in the European Parliament, the centre-right European People's Party, says a number of its members have requested the exclusion or suspension of Hungary's governing Fidesz party. Hungary's right-wing nationalist Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, has angered some in the EPP with his stridently anti-immigrant stance. Nearly 150 Islamic State fighters holed up in Baghouz, the last village still held by the jihadist group in Syria, have surrendered to the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces. The SDF had to slow down its final push on Baghouz because the militants were holding civilians as human shields. 350 handed themselves over to the advancing forces. An international team of researchers studying ocean temperatures have revealed the frequency of marine heat waves has risen by more than 50% since the early 20th century. These have been recorded in many parts of the Atlantic, Pacific and Indian Oceans. Scientists say sudden abrupt rises in water temperature are a threat to fish stocks, coral reefs and other marine life. BBC News. Hello, I'm Marion Mark.
Hey y'all, this your man Roderick, the host of the Black Patriot Show, and you're listening to WHBJ Digital Talk Radio, where we are the media. Keep it locked.
This is a snowflake-free zone. Chief Report. The Chief Report. The Chief Report. This is a snowflake-free Chief Report. The Chief Report. The Chief Report. This is a snowflake-free Chief Report. The Chief Report. The Chief Report. This is a snowflake-free Chief Report. The Chief Report. The Chief Report. This is a snowflake. It's like I get reminiscence to spit them. Vocals is wicked. Why the Chief Report? Because I'm never bullshitting. Commie cracks is on my nerves. I'm pulling off from the curb. My fingers I give a middle. I know, so absurd. Media ain't worried about them. They better be peeping cheap. My stories be days ahead. Researching while they sleep. My Twitter be blowing up because I be speaking truth. Can also translate it through the mic in this booth. My homies still thugging, cause some of them still struggling. Democrats pimp the hood, turn me to a black Republican. Street soldier and ghetto vet, learn to straddle the fence. Reppin' Indiana, and yep, I'm rocking with Pence. Now I come to intercept media misinformation and lies told from that commie crack plantation. It's the Chief Report. Come and get baptized in the truth and let it loose and open some eyes. Chief Report, the Chief Report. The Chief Report. This is a snowflake-free Chief Report. The Chief Report. The Chief Report. This is a snowflake-free Chief Report. The Chief Report. The Chief Report. This is a snowflake-free Chief Report. The Chief Report. The Chief Report. This is a snowflake-free. Twitter can censor me. I still got this mic. Whether the Chief Report or ripping rhymes, I'm out of sight. I got nothing to lose. See, I came up from the gutter and got balls. Did you hear me? Did I stood at the stutter? Commie cracks or blow hards for marks. I can't deal. Capitalist by nature, no propaganda. I'm too real. The Chief Report. James Chief, not a shock jock. Although fucking with my freedoms got me blowing my hot top. No, I will not stop. You got me confused. Not in it for fame. My brain watch my fake news. Paid dues through street wars and stripes was earned. Fucking with them commie crats, I have you feeling the burn. Don't be worried about Chief, baby, I'm straight as a perm. And how you feel about the truth is of my last concern. It's the Chief Report. Come and get baptized in the truth and let it loose and open some eyes. Chief Report. The Chief Report. The Chief Report. This is a snowflake-free Chief Report. The Chief Report. The Chief Report. This is a snowflake-free Chief Report.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy James Chief, and I'm back at you with the Chief Report. And tonight is Legislation Thursdays, and I got my co-host Roderick Threets on the line with me. And tonight we're going to be discussing the new gun legislation that was passed in the House of Representatives yesterday and today. Two pieces of legislation were passed. So we're going to dig into that, and also Utah, they passed the Convention of States this week also. So what's going on, Roderick? How you doing, brother?
Hey, you know, it is another day, man. It's been long. These last couple of days have been running like longer than all get out, man. I've been all over this county, on state capitol and everything. But it's been good. It's been interesting. It's been quite fruitful too. So got to be happy for that and blessed for that one for sure.
Without a doubt. That's good, man. I know you always keep busy. You're really about handling some legislation in the state of Utah, I see.
Yeah, I'm always emailing, talking, calling, showing up in person, sitting in committees. You know, that's what it's all about, right? It's all about the local government, right? Because if we don't tailor our local government to what our needs are to what we need down here, you know, we can't look to the federal delegation to help us, right? It's all about what's going on right here with us at this moment in time, and that's how it's supposed to be.
Without a doubt. So I know you've been busy with everything that's going on in Utah. Have you been able to catch anything as far as the new gun legislation that has been passed?
Oh man, let me tell you, it has been a complete. I'm completely appalled, honestly, at the legislation, right? It's and what they've tried to do with it too, right? They tried to play slick with it, right? And use this distraction from the whole everybody's up in an uproar about the infanticide deal, and everybody's distracted with Trump going to say Kim Jong-un, right? And that's why we do this every Thursday to redirect folks' focus to what's really going on. So while everybody's distracted, both the left and the right's distracted about all this, and they're trying to throw some stuff underneath their noses, and then they'll turn around later like, oh my God, when did that happen?
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah, that's exactly how I started the article I wrote yesterday about what was taking place. The media was distracting the public with the Michael Cohen hearing, and like I was telling people on Twitter, I support Trump, but he can handle himself. He has enough people to help him handle his. But in the meantime, the House of Representatives is, they were passing this law on background checks, and you heard nothing about it.
Right.
They call it the Bipartisan Backgrounds Check Act of 2019, and it was sponsored by Mike Thompson, Democrat, California's 5th District, and he actually introduced this legislation on January 8th of 2019, and the bill, it was a heavy partisan bill, just like the one today. It passed by a vote of 240 to 190, it's their... They call it a bipartisan background checks bill, but it's not even that. You could tell by the numbers. So how do you think the Republicans in the Senate are going to play this?
I honestly, I look at Mitch McConnell. He's not even going to bring it to a vote on the floor. He's not even going to bring it to a floor vote. Period. Even if it makes it out of the committee. I can't try to remember what committee it's been referred to now. Now it's passed the House. I think it's Judiciary. I think it's the Senate Judiciary. I don't think it's going to get out of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And if it does, if it makes it to the floor, Mitch McConnell will not bring it for at least they won't even bring it for a second reading. You know what I mean? It'll come for the first reading, but I don't see it going to a second reading because they're not going to vote on this. I can almost guarantee that.
Yeah, President Trump has already said he'll veto both bills should they make it to his desk. Now, according to Section 2, purpose of the actual Bipartisan Backgrounds Check Act, the purpose of this act is to utilize the current background checks process in the United States to ensure individuals prohibited from gun possession are not able to obtain firearms. That's from the actual legislation. Now, although Section 2 states its purpose is to keep individuals prohibited from gun possessions from legally obtaining a firearm, yet Debbie Lesko of Arizona had to introduce an amendment that would require ICE to be notified if an illegal immigrant tries to purchase a firearm. Now, that amendment was passed by a simple voice vote, but what I don't get is, aren't illegal immigrants already prohibited from purchasing a firearm? And if not, why?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that amendment.
Yeah, that is exactly correct, right? Because if those of us that are deep, especially into the Second Amendment, right? We know that the Brady Handgun Act started with NICS, right? NICS, right? Which was basically meant to identify people from legally prohibiting the gain access to weapons. That includes felons. People who have been put in mental institutions, undocumented immigrants, people with domestic violence convictions, etc. So if they would just look at the Brady Act, they wouldn't need that amendment.
Right. That's right. That's what tripped me out. The amendment really shouldn't even be needed, even without the Brady Act. If you're an illegal immigrant in this country, how could you possibly be able to purchase a firearm legally? But you're right. If they do look towards the Brady Act, then they would already know that illegal immigrants shouldn't be able to purchase a firearm. You know, what it reminds me of is when you talk to a Commie-crat about illegal immigration, they act like the word illegal isn't even there. Like there's there's no crime being committed. So first you let them come into the country, you give them welfare, you want to give them free college, you want to give them the right to vote. They're stripping away them being illegal immigrants, and then to top it all off, there has to be an amendment to ensure that illegal immigrants don't get guns. This is why I loved when you brought the idea to do Legislation Thursdays, because it's so important with all the media distractions that are going on that people know exactly what's taking place in our country. This should have been headlining on every news network, and maybe not the left-leaning networks, but definitely on Fox. This should have been headlining yesterday and today. But again, they treat the illegals better than they treat us. And it shouldn't never have to come to a point where an amendment has to be added to gun legislation to ensure ICE is notified when an illegal immigrant is trying to buy a firearm. Now, my thing with that is sanctuary cities, they don't want to alert ICE when they have an illegal immigrant in custody. So how are we to believe that ICE is going to be notified when an illegal immigrant is trying to purchase a firearm?
Yeah, it's. I don't even know. I can't even explain the paradigm they're trying to create here, right? Because it's almost. These sanctuary cities are. They're already defying a federal law in the first place, right? So the bigger question I have is. Does the federal government have to go in by force?
Yeah,
and enforce these laws on their own, which will create a constitutional crisis because of the 10th Amendment. Yes, but if obviously the lawsuit would go to the Supreme Court, and the federal government will lose in that case unless the federal government can prove that the citizens are at harm or in harm's way. Then. Obviously, all bets are off because that's one of their enumerated powers. But I can see it being stalled out if the federal government was to do something like that. I could see it being stalled out,
of course,
in the court, or if not, the coastal states will start a civil war.
Right, and it seems like they were almost giving a dog whistle to the illegal immigrants that, hey, you can go get a gun. Because look at what ICE had to do in 2017 when it came to rounding up illegal immigrants because the sanctuary city judges were trying to float an illegal out of the back door of the courtroom and so on. I mean, it got to a point this year where ICE literally had to go to a couple of businesses and basically conduct a raid in order to round up illegal immigrants. So if ICE has to do that, you know what, now they're supposed to check the gun registry to see if illegal immigrants are trying to possess firearms. It makes no sense. Now, another Democrat, Georgia Representative Hank Johnson, now he made the claim that the problem we have in this country is that the law also allows unlicensed firearm dealers competing with licensed firearm dealers to sell just as many firearms as a licensed firearm dealer, but without doing the background checks. He also said that it contributes to persons not allowed a firearm to have access. Now, according to ATF.org, Federal Gun Control Act requires that persons who are engaged in the business of dealing in firearms be licensed by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Now, this is a direct contradiction of Johnson's claims that unlicensed dealers can compete with licensed firearm dealers. But this is the narrative that the Commie-crats were pushing yesterday. And again, federal law states that you have to be licensed, okay? Now, how is an unlicensed dealer going to compete and sell just as many guns as a licensed firearm dealer?
Right, and I know a little bit about this myself because my daughter's mother, their family are gunsmiths in Pennsylvania, right? And before you even think about, before you even go to like Taurus or Smith & Wesson or somebody like that, you got to have your ATF Form 7 in order. That has to be in order, period, before an arms dealer will even look at you. So, again, for Hank Johnson to turn around and say, oh, we're unlicensed dealers. How do you become a dealer when your major arms dealers, or your major arm manufacturers, check your Form 7?
Right.
It baffles me, and people are buying into stuff that Hank Johnson says.
Right.
You know what I mean? And think, oh, no, this, that, and... Man alive, I tell you, I'm not even.
Now,
I know we'll go down that road, man.
Now, they're also bringing into play gun ownership transfers. And with regard to gun ownership transfers, federal law states all persons who transfer firearms, regardless of whether they are engaged in the business of dealing in firearms, must ensure that any transfers are in compliance with federal, state, and local laws. And currently, less than 1% of convicted felons get guns from licensed dealers. So, again, there are laws in place to ensure that gun transfers don't take place under the table. Now, of course, people are going to obtain guns illegally. My thing is, why aren't they doing something? You look at the Aurora shooter, right? He was not supposed to have a firearm because of his criminal record. They're attacking the law-abiding, gun-carrying citizens in America, but they're not doing anything at the local and state level to say, how did this guy get a weapon and he failed the background checks? His criminal record prohibited him from carrying even owning a firearm in the state of Illinois. How did this guy purchase a gun legally and then go to his workplace and use that gun to kill co-workers and shoot? He also shot some police officers. But the thing is, he was prohibited. So why punish the law-abiding citizens when somewhere in the law enforcement, I'm not talking about the police officers, but the people who are supposed to run the checks and balances and make sure that the guns don't fall into the wrong hands aren't doing their jobs, and the law-abiding citizens are the ones that have to pay for this.
Right. That's exactly correct. You couldn't have said it no better.
Yeah,
the thing is, though, right, you know how you solve that problem, right? And it's not on the federal level, right? The federal level should not even be thinking or even thought about in the first place creating laws that basically go against the Second Amendment. They're only supposed to uphold the Constitution. It's up to the states to keep these databases and share information through interstate means. Okay, to find who these people are, because we already know the federal government has a database, and you own a weapon, you're in a database, and you can be targeted very easily,
exactly,
because you have that weapon, right? So that the federal government does not need that kind, of power,
right, over
the people. It's a complete overreach. But you know what else is interesting, right? With speaking of the other piece of legislation, HR, I think it's HR 1112, where it's been dubbed the Charleston loophole.
Yeah, I was going to get to that in the next segment. Exactly.
Okay, then we'll get to that. We'll get that next segment then, because there's a couple of things in there that they're trying to he's trying to pull off on the sly in there, and I need to highlight a couple of those things for people so they understand. But back to the whole databasing situation, right? It's worrisome that you want to point at people, right, like you said, that are law-abiding citizens, but you have these maniacs running around out here purchasing guns illegally. And second of all, the other piece of that, other part of that legislation too, is that it doesn't actually mention the fact of how. Well, let me take that back. I know where I'm going with that, but I have to kind of streamline it a little bit. I'll be forever long on that. They haven't addressed the fact that the FBI check was slow in the first place, right? So that just goes to show you again, people, government gets their hand in something, they are sure to mess it up.
Yes.
They are dead sure to mess it up. And that's exactly this case with the guy in Aurora, right? Exact case. Background check came back late. He shouldn't have a firearm, etc. Or look at the what's that guy's name in Texas? I'm not going to mention his name. That went in there and purchased that rifle, and he's on a mental list from the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah.
Again, the federal government failed again.
Yeah.
So why do we want them handling gun legislation?
Right. Without a doubt. And not only that, the Republicans actually tried to implement some things that would make the bill a lot better. Representative Steve Scalise, he rose in strong opposition to the legislation, stating, "We Republicans had identified a number of problems with this bill that we were trying to improve, and every one of those was shut out by the Democrat majority who wanted to try and stifle the debate." Scalise and other Republicans feel that under the new legislation, merely loaning your gun to a friend to try out at a shooting range or even a hunting expedition without the gun owner on site could possibly lead to said gun owner being a felon subject to 1 year in jail and $1,000 fine.
Right.
So now it's like you can't even you want to try out my weapon because you're interested in buying one, and I can't even let you use it to go to the shooting range. Or if you want to go hunting, I can't loan you my rifle to go hunting. This isn't just about background checks. This is about controlling the gun owners in America. That's all this is about. And if we keep letting them get away with this, they're going to keep chipping away at our Second Amendment rights.
Yes, they will.
Now,
yes, they will.
As far as the legislation that was passed today, that's the one you were talking about with the Charleston loophole, as it's known. And it got that name because Dylan Roof, that's what they say allowed him to buy the gun he used to kill 9 people in 2015 in a church in Charleston, South Carolina. So you wanted to touch on that, so I'm going to pass the mic to you and let you get into that.
See, now, we've heard the mass shootings, right, since Vegas, right? Vegas, Parkland, right, what have you, down the line. And I want to ask the question: what was the number one quote unquote thing they had said that was wrong, that was going on with these people? Right? What was the answer you always got?
Mental illness.
Mm-hmm. This bill, it's HR 1112, right?
Yeah.
This bill, right, basically will say, okay, hey, if a person's been adjudicated for mental defectiveness or adjudicated with a mental illness or severe developmental disability or severe emotional instability. Now, that last part, let's key in on that part, severe emotional instability.
Okay.
Okay. Depression in the DSM, okay, is deemed as an emotional instability.
Right. And actually, I have a Twitter friend. She battles depression, and that's exactly what she pointed out, that under this new legislation, by me being diagnosed with depression, I wouldn't be able to purchase a firearm to protect myself.
Yes, that's exactly correct. And I mean, the question is, who determines that you have a severe emotional instability? Because you think about this a second, right? Most Americans have battled with depression in some form or another, whether it be, be light or mild or very extreme in their life.
Right.
Does that disqualify them, right? Because obviously, this stuff is documented. Yeah. All they got to do is go pull your medical records. Oh, he was diagnosed with light depression. Okay, then we can't sell him a gun and deem it severe because this can escalate, right? So this is really putting Americans at risk more than really the other bill is, right? Because you're deemed a little depressed, or you spent some time in a mental institution and a mental hospital to get yourself right.
Yeah.
Now you're a second-class citizen.
Right.
No. See, and
look what they would
something.
look what they did in Florida and a few other states where you could merely call law enforcement and say that this guy is a threat to himself or a threat to others, or he or she threatened me. And next thing you know, law enforcement is coming to confiscate their guns. All they did was put it into federal law now. That's all they did. So you ask who's going to determine when a person is mentally unstable? Well, it seems like the person that picks up the phone and calls local law enforcement and says, I found some Xanax in this person's medicine cabinet. It is their prescription. I didn't know until now that they were fighting with depression, and they always go to the shooting range. They have guns. Next thing you know, are the local law enforcement going to go to that person's house because someone found a prescription for Xanax and said that they were battling depression and come to their home and confiscate their guns? Because that's what this sounds like to me.
Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is. That is, I can't even comment on that. That's exactly what it is, right? I mean, the left in general, right, love their paradigms, right? They love their boxes. They like to put people in, right? Everybody has their own little box.
Yeah.
And when they open the little box, you can say something. When they close it, you need to sit down somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And those, right. And those of you who don't believe me, the most recent case was with Kanye. Right. What did Maxine Waters say? He's a smart individual, but he needs to shut up when he's not spoken to.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that box that they're putting people into, and speak when spoken to. Like, no, we're not children. We ain't children up in here.
Exactly. And that's what they're trying to treat us like.
Yeah. You don't know better. So we know better for you.
And that's the exact point right there. The federal government, especially the left mainly, is always trying to, we know better than you do, so hurry up and wait, shut up, and we got this. And in the meantime, they're just stripping away our Constitution, and it just burns my ass because all of these distractions in the media. Again, Michael Cohen hearing, I saw so much said about that, whether it be social networks or on the news networks, but nothing about what was going on with our Second Amendment rights. And that really burns me up because how can we defeat what the Communocrats are doing other than relying on the Senate or President Trump vetoing legislation? Why must we rely on them? We should be picking up the phones, calling our legislators, and giving them a piece of our mind about this. But how can that happen when all we get is distractions from the media and now social media? Because it shouldn't come down to the legislators. We shouldn't be surprised because, like I said on Twitter, I don't think the media and social media is going to talk about these two pieces of legislation until it hits the Senate. And then the media will be talking about it. And then you'll see the big names on social media talking about, they're trying to take our rights, this, that, and the other. I don't think most of them are aware that this even passed the House of Representatives. And that's what burns me up.
I know that's right. Yeah, it's people need to, and this is for the folks on our side, right? And, I preach this all the time in some form or another, right? Instead of everybody worried about trying to win an argument with a liberal, with a progressive, right? Worried about winning an argument with a Democrat over something, right? I mean, your arguments on social media is okay, right? To a point. But some of these people on our side get completely consumed by it. Every time you turn around, it's this, it's that, right? But then, like, folks like me and you will post something about legislation, and, like, it doesn't hardly get any likes or any retweets. And it's like, but you're supposed to be for country, but you worried about the drama and arguing with people instead of paying attention to what's really going down out here. And that's going to be the downfall of our country. People not paying attention at all, not being engaged.
The perfect example is how many times I see people complaining about Ilhan Omar and how did this happen and what can we do? Well, it happened because we weren't paying attention. Now, getting back to the today's gun legislation, this also, if it was to become law, which it probably won't, because, again, even if the Senate was to surprise us like they did with Obamacare and let it pass through the Senate. President Trump, my fault. We were surprised with Obamacare because it didn't pass through the Senate. But if this was to pass through the Senate, President Trump has already said he would veto it. But if this was to become law, this would also affect women who are victims of domestic violence. And that's a big issue. Now, I have a clip I want to play. Let me cue this clip up because Debbie Lesko, she has been a true soldier, and she's also a domestic violence survivor. So I'm going to play this clip.
Yeah, she's definitely been a champ.
Right. I'm going to play this clip and get your opinion.
Use of physical force or the threatened use of a deadly weapon committed by a current or former spouse, parent, or guardian of the victim, by a person with whom the victim shares a child in common, by a person who is cohabitating with or has cohabitated with the victim as a spouse, parent, or guardian, or by a person similarly situated to a spouse, parent, or guardian of the victim, and
the gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This motion to recommit will not kill the bill or send it back to committee, to be clear. If adopted, the bill will immediately proceed to final passage as amended. My Democrat colleagues are set to pass this bill, despite the fact that the ACLU opposes it. Let me repeat that. The ACLU opposes H.R. 1112 because it is so sweeping and improperly perpetrates unfounded assumptions that people with mental... Could the House be in order?
Gentlelady will suspend. The House will be in order. Please take your conversations off the floor.
The ACLU opposes it because it perpetrates unfounded assumptions that people with mental disabilities should be considered dangerous and are prone to violence without any meaningful due process. As most of you know, I am a survivor of domestic violence, and that is why this motion to recommit is so personally important to me. This motion to recommit, in contrast, is narrowly tailored. It would simply allow victims of domestic violence who go through a NICS check to receive their firearms in 3 days, which is the status quo, if NICS has not responded with a denial or approval in 3 business days. Again, the status quo. Do we really want to tell victims of domestic violence they have to wait up to 20 business days, which is under this bill, before they are allowed to adequately defend themselves? Do we really want to tell them, sorry, if I know you're purchasing a firearm to protect yourself, but you have to wait 20 business days? Should we tell them, hopefully, you can hide from your abuser for the next month? The Judiciary Committee recently heard testimony from a young woman who was raped on her college campus. She did not have a gun on campus because the state did not allow her to carry a gun in order to defend herself. This is a clear example of how law-abiding citizens, not criminals, follow the law, and how this law-abiding young woman was harmed by gun control laws. More specific example related to this bill is an example of a well-intentioned law gone wrong is Carol Bown, a New Jersey woman stabbed to death while waiting to be approved for her firearm application. She already had an order of protection from the courts, but that wasn't enough for her. She needed more than just that piece of paper. She needed to protect herself, so she went and tried to get a gun to defend herself, but because of the waiting period, she was killed. Let me repeat that. Carol Bound had an order of protection. She attempted to purchase a firearm, and she was tragically murdered by her abuser while waiting to be approved.
So there you have it. That's what we're up against. Now, we already have cases of women who've done the right thing when they're victims of domestic violence. They, apply for the firearms license. They have the temporary restraining order put out. And yet and still, even under a 3-day waiting period, this woman lost her life. And now the Comicrats, they want to extend that waiting period for law-abiding citizens to 20 days. A restraining order isn't enough, obviously. But now you're going to tell these women they have to wait 20 days in order to protect themselves when they already have some nutcase dude that is violent with them. This is what this country is going through. 20 days. You still there, Robert?
It sounds like to me that the left abhors violence, right? I mean, if you really think about it and break it down to the nitty gritty, right? They're all about the violence, to push their agenda, right? Got, this lady here, right? Carol Bound, stabbed to death when she tried to get a permit. Countless other women that have been through the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? Try to get a firearm to protect themselves. Ended up severely harmed, or if not killed. Right? It all has an agenda, right? And the biggest agenda I see before we get back into legislation, but this kind of leads into a few things, right? This postmodernist agenda basically is what this really is, right? It's like, okay, the old laws are dead, and they're really, in a way, they're trying to invoke Noahide laws in the sense of it, because everything just about them right now is violence towards women, violence towards conservatives, violence towards infants. I mean, it's so disgusting. The party that is saying that we're for women, we're for we're just for equal rights. But what about the people that are harmed by their policies? I don't think they look in the mirror. I think they turn the mirror around and look through it and tell you what's going down. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's completely disgusting and depressing.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it on the surface, it seems as if they're trying to wipe out as many Americans as possible, or put them in a situation to where they can't defend themselves in hopes that we'll be wiped out. Because again, the illegals get, whether you're an illegal immigrant or you're a criminal, it seems like the criminals and the illegals, they have the upper hand in this country. Now that the Comicrats have the majority in the House. And like I saw someone say in the chat a few minutes ago, we better not lose 2020, because that's the only way I could see any of these things being attempted to be reversed. Now, again, this legislation probably would never be, this bill would probably never become law, but the mere fact that they are even considering it to where they did push it through the House, this is scary, because what's to say that it doesn't land on the president's desk? And even though he would veto it, then we have to look at what's going on with the Republican Senate, that they let this get through. Are they going to play ball with the Comicrats and say, well, amend this, amend that, and we'll go for it? Because I hope you're right. I hope Mitch McConnell doesn't even hold a vote for it. But with what I've seen from the Republican Senate over the past few weeks and even last year, I'm not so sure that it won't come up for a vote.
Right. Right, because there's going to be a lot of Democrats, especially like Susan Collins and Murkowski, that are always on that fence. Especially when it comes to constitutionality, they're always on that darn fence.
Right.
And and their re-elections are coming up, so it's kind of like, you know what I mean? They're going to play to their base.
Now,
going to play to their base.
What's going on that the FBI is missing these background checks? Because again, to me, that's the problem. Something needs to be fixed within the background check system itself. I don't think there needs to be any new laws, but what's going on that a person like, I forget his name, in Aurora, Illinois, that committed that shooting a few weeks ago, he has a criminal record. He was not supposed to have a gun. What is going on between the FBI and even state law enforcement and on down to local where this stuff is not being caught? Because it's happening too many times that we find out a person that shouldn't even have had a gun purchased one legally and then went out and committed a mass shooting. I think that the focus needs to be on the system checks itself and seeing do we need more agents so we can handle all of the background checks? Is there something slow in the computer system that carries the information? What is going on that level?
Well, it's the inundation, right? Gun sales have gone through the roof the last 2 years. The inundation is real. But see, here's my issue. You wanna fix that problem? Same thing I said at the beginning. We need to take the federal delegation out of it. Period. They need to be out of it, point blank. I mean, that's just the bottom line. That way, there is not that inundation, and they can do it on a state-to-state basis. And then states can say, hey, you know what? If you want to do a gun control measure or a gun carry measure for reciprocity, sure, let's do it. Right? Let's do that. I mean, in essence, really, you shouldn't need a reciprocity law to carry a firearm across state lines because the Constitution protects your right to do so.
Exactly.
It's just the fact of, okay, you have a card saying you carry a weapon. That's the only thing that should be required. But really, we need to get the federal government out of it. That'll solve 90% of the problems. Second of all, I really personally, if I had my choice, I would have an organization like the NRA handle it.
Well,
right?
you know the Communocrats not going for that.
Right. Because the thing is like you have a third party that's not database to the federal government or any government, so you're not targeted, and it would be more efficient. And guess what? They talk about you want to create jobs for people. Here you are. You are creating jobs instead of creating jobs in the federal government and weighing us down with taxes to pay these people.
Yeah,
leave it at the state level or give it to a third party organization to handle it.
Yeah, good point.
And if somebody like the IRA handles it and they slip up, hold them accountable because there's no way we can hold the federal government accountable.
True.
You know what I mean? But we can hold a third-party entity accountable, and the government can hold them accountable.
True that.
And they can sanction them, better than we can sanction the federal government. So, I mean, that's how we fix that problem.
And it's 2019. It's the age of information and technology. They can write algorithms that I could post something and it affects the visibility of my post. They can write all these algorithms to know who you are, where you shop, what you like to eat, and trigger ads specified for that. But you mean to tell me we can't write any algorithms in the background check system that is going to red flag certain individuals? That makes no sense to me. We can write algorithms for anything else. I don't think this has to be as hard as it is. And again, we're talking about mainly, I would imagine, new gun owners, because anyone that has already purchased a firearm has already went through the background check system. I know in Indiana, if you have a permit, you can go get that gun the same day because you've already went through the federal background check. They know you're straight. Right. Bam, you can get it the same day. Now, if you don't have a permit, you have to wait up to 3 to 5 days, I think it is, to go through that full background check. So we're doing it here in Indiana. According to what my research came up with, there are 19 states that have policies for extended background checks. 6 of those states cover handguns only, and 13 states cover all guns. So some of this also has to do with the fact that the states aren't doing what they should be doing. Out of 19, there's only 19 states that cover background checks. The states need to get involved because this is what allows the federal government to come in and say, we got to handle this because the states aren't handling their business and people are dying. That's what the Commie-crats are falling back on. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no way that only 19 states should have background checks laws.
Right. Exactly. And another way I just thought about too, you want to make the system very efficient when it comes to that. Combine NICS with NCIC.
Yeah.
There you go. Right. You don't need two separate databases to basically do the same thing, because the background, the NICS checks background, etc. The same way. It's a little bit more extensive. Why not combine that with NCIC? And you'll have everything at your fingertips, and you don't have to check multiple databases and et cetera, et cetera. But then again, as you know, I am opposed of the government holding databases to make people targets. So, yeah. I mean, this is something the third party, could be doing. I mean, the only problem with the third party doing it, once again, is, are you going to have someone that's going to abuse their position and use that database to target people?
Well,
obviously that's one of the things.
It's already being abused. You look at the no-fly list. You can land on that list for almost anything, and once you're on that no-fly list, you're on a no-gun list. So the system is already being abused, and that's something else that, again, if these bills were to become law, which we highly doubt, but if they were, you could just imagine everyone that's on a no-fly list not being able to purchase a gun, and those that have already purchased guns legally, I could see them getting their firearms confiscated. And a lot of people, to my knowledge, don't even know that they're on a no-fly list until they try to fly somewhere.
Right. Yep, that's exactly. And Michael, he brought up something in the chat too, that I very, very much agree with. He talked about, it's a concealed carry permit, right?
Yeah.
And he's made a point, because once you start, once we started with the permits, et cetera, right? It becomes a privilege at that point.
Right. And I agree with what he said also, but the only thing is, you have too many loons out here, that we can't just go with the right to bear arms and not have any type of system of checks and balances in place. We can't just let everyone have a gun. But I do agree with what he said. Once you have to have a permit, that it becomes a privilege and not a right. That is true. But unfortunately,
right.
No, go ahead.
But you see, the thing is, too, I'm gonna dive into something else real quick. Like, speaking of privilege, right? And having a concealed carry permit as a privilege, right? And then we have our constitutional right to vote, but you see how they're automatically registering people to vote off of their privilege to drive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of funny, right? You have a privilege to drive, but we're going to make you. The state government is going to force you to invoke your 15th Amendment right.
Right. I mean, it's bad. Henry Davis, he was supposed to meet the president last weekend. I think it was last weekend, and he couldn't get into the White House because his license was suspended.
Yep, I saw that. Yep.
It's like, wow, you lose your right to drive. You lose a lot of rights in this country.
Right, but then, Mr. Number 44 had a felon multiple times in the White House. So,
you're talking about Jay-Z? Yeah, it's funny how that works, right?
Saying.
Now let's get off of the gun legislation because we're running out of time. I know a good friend of mine on Twitter and Red Elephant, Michael Arnold. He's in Massachusetts, if I remember correctly, and he's pushing for a convention of the states. I think that's what it is. And you also told me that in Utah, I think, what was it, yesterday or the day before, that you guys passed a convention of states. So I know that's a confusing topic for a lot of people, but it's becoming really popular. It's gaining traction in various places. So why don't you take a little bit of time to explain the Convention of States and exactly what that entails?
Convention of States project is definitely a deep grassroots project that's basically aiming to amend the Constitution, right? One of the biggest things for a convention of states right now for us, I'm love you know that I'm a district captain in Utah for a convention of states, and we're one of the things we really want to push is term limits, and we also want to push a balanced budget amendment, because Lord knows we know the federal government is on a runaway train right now when it comes to spending money, and we cannot depend on either chamber of Congress to limit themselves. Okay. So the Convention of States project started quite a few years back. Right now, at the present time, there's actually 13 states that actually have pushed the bill both through their House and Senate, which is Arkansas. Utah here, we're teeing up to be number 14 yesterday. Our Senate Joint Resolution number 9 actually passed through the Senate 16-12. So that's half the good news for it. Now the House is another story, because we have a lot of thumb-sucking conservatives that are in the House. But a lot of them are on board, but obviously we know the Democrats aren't on board, period, when it comes to that. Because obviously that they're the big argument with Convention of States is, it's going to be a runaway convention and this, that, and the third. And it's like, the thing about Article 5, the beautiful thing about Article 5, right? One is probably one of the most beautiful articles of the Constitution, because it kind of gives us the right to say, hey, federal government, sit down, let the adults fix this. Right.
Right.
Also, what people don't know is a constitutional convention is different than any other legislative forum, because in most legislative forums, you need 2/3 to pass anything. Convention of States, you need 3/4 on everything.
Okay.
3/4.
That's
right?
why I wanted you to explain it, because there's a difference in the two.
Yes, it is. And for it to be a quote-unquote a runaway convention, you think 34 states are going to let something run away?
Right.
I mean, let's really sit back and think about that a second. You know what I mean? So, and that's the biggest dissent towards it, right? And the few arguments I've heard from the liberals themselves are like, well, you could something could happen and they could just revoke the Second Amendment. I'm like, are you really kidding me right now? One guy told me one time that Article 5 is not even constitutional. And I sat there and I looked at him and I'm like, you want to restate that? You sure Article 5 is non-constitutional when it's written in the Constitution?
Right, exactly. Who is even listening
you
to?
You know what you're talking about. So those of you that are listening, go check out conventionofstates.com. Check your state, see if your state signed the petition, or if your state has not pushed it through, please call your state legislators and let them know, hey, we need to get on board with this, because federal government's out of control, and the only way we will not be basically pawns or slaves to the federal government is to take charge of our government again.
Without a doubt. For clarification, Michael Arnold, he is the state director, Massachusetts state director for the Convention of States. And I've been planning to get him on the show. So I think what I'm going to do is have him join us next Thursday, and we can do the whole hour about the Convention of States.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
We can definitely do that.
Yeah, because we agree on the federal government is just trying to run away with everything. And, that's socialism. Any way you look at it, the federal government gets bigger. Now, even without the Convention of States being a topic, I've had guests on my show last year that were talking about term limits, and there were some pretty good opinions on it. But one opinion that really stuck with me is when someone said in the chat, well, what happens if we have term limits and we do have a legislator that we like? but that legislator has to step down because his term limit has come up. That could also be a problem because I'm into thinking that we do have term limits, and it's called the voters vote them out. But naturally, we can't.
Right.
We don't seem to be able to do that. So, if we have term limits, what happens if we get a legislator that we do like that is actually doing their job, and then they come up against their term?
And that's a hard one, but I still have to cite back to the Constitution, right? We're supposed to be, let me take that. Let's go back to the foundation of the Constitution, right? The Federalist Papers, right?
Right.
And particularly Federalist number 22. Mr. Hamilton talks about a representative government, right? And we're to go serve for our community, for basically a short period of time, and then come back to our community and bring that information we've learned to make our communities better, right? To become mayors or councilmen, et cetera, or governors, et cetera, while another person goes to the federal delegation to gain that same kind of experience and comes back and makes your community better.
Right.
And I mean that's pretty much my stance on it. I mean, they might be a good legislator, but guess what? Just like my campaign slogan was, and my friend's campaign slogan was MAGLA, make American government local again, and that's what it's all about. It's not about the federal delegation, right? So we send them to Congress. They come back, they have the experience and know what's happening on a national level and how they can apply that information on the local level to make things better. And that's how it should be, period.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like you've heard me say it a million times, there's only so much a federal delegation can do. It's the people in your state capitals that dictate everything that you're doing.
Right.
So
we've been trained to focus only on Washington, D.C., and that's a big problem. It's not like the 70s and even the 80s where your community, you knew your aldermen, districtmen, a lot of people even knew the mayor of their cities and towns and so on. It's not like that anymore. Right. Everything we've been suckered into. We've actually been suckered into making the federal government bigger because anytime we have a problem, look at censorship when it comes to social media. You had to hear as well as I heard people saying, oh, Congress needs to do something. And I'm like, whoa. If you let Congress do something, you're letting them put hands on our First Amendment. We can do something about this. Go to another social network. And it just blows my mind that I hear people on one hand saying federal government is too big. That, we need to trim the federal government. But then when there's an issue, oh, Congress needs to do something. Senate needs to do something. So we've been trained, indoctrinated, if you will, to always look towards Washington, D.C. and the federal government. And more and more are we neglecting our state and local politics.
Right. And really, in essence, right, just like you're saying, they've got us turn to the federal government. It's kind of like giving up your 10th Amendment as the people, the citizens of the state. You're giving up your 10th Amendment.
Now, explain that for the people that don't know what the 10th Amendment is.
The 10th Amendment is in essence states' rights, right? The 10th Amendment basically declared our country a federation instead of a confederation, right? Which means the states are individual and independent from the federal government, which it's supposed to be. But when we allow the federal government to dictate to us, the citizens in the states, what they want done, we are giving up our 10th Amendment right.
Yeah.
As a whole.
Mm-hmm. We've given up a lot of rights.
Yes, we have. Yes, even going to the 16th Amendment, right? The 16th Amendment talks about the election of 2 senators by the state legislators.
Yeah.
That was amended in 1992 by a supermajority Democrat bicameral Congress. Right? Instead of, because I really honestly, especially when it comes to senators, and I've been in this game for a minute, as far as studying legislative structure and things like that. And the senators are probably your most powerful people in government.
True.
One, they cover a lot bigger area, right? They have a lot of representatives that come to them with issues to try to get pushed out, right? And they're, in most cases, 9 times out of 10, they are the last ones to say anything about anything before it goes to the executor. And by the people electing these guys by popular vote, anything can go awry.
Yeah.
That's why I have always been like, we should have kept the 16th Amendment the way it was. Let the state legislatures decide who they send to the federal delegation in the Senate.
Yeah.
Because the representatives, they automatically cover the ground anyway. They just need to talk to, their Senate leader, basically, right? And let them know, hey, this is what the people are saying to him. But we don't have that. It's almost like everybody is split to their own sides and independent, try to do their own thing through their own caucuses. And it's like, this is why a lot of times you don't get a lot of bipartisan legislation.
Right.
Because you don't have these people talking to each other.
Exactly. Now, to your knowledge, how many states right now are experimenting with a convention of states?
Right now, I know that there's 7 states I know from the last meeting I was in, because we have meetings once a week, that are toying around with it, or it's in their committees and it's failed to come out, or they resubmitted it in the committee, etc. So that's a good sign. Hopefully we can get those guys on board by the end of the year, and that'll get us a little bit closer to 34, because we need 34 total,
right,
to call it.
Okay.
So it's a long road, but we'll get there. As long as more people go and sign the petition. Or even if you don't sign a petition, and if you're an advocate for reeling in the federal government, go to your state house. If you live close enough, I'm not saying advocating driving 6-7 hours like guys here in Utah. Guys from Southern Utah, it takes them 5.5 hours to get here. So I don't advocate for that unless you can really afford to take a day off from work and you have the money to cover it. But when these resolutions and stuff come up to committees, go and show up and be like, hey, I'm in support, and that makes a big difference, especially in committee. You'd be surprised how much legislation can get out of committee if the people just come and show up.
Right, and that's the reason for the Chief Report, and in particular this Thursday legislation Thursdays is to wake the people up and try to band together and do exactly what you said. Start contacting our local government, state governments, and especially our state representatives and state senators, because our senators and representatives are our voice to Washington, D.C. And if they're not going to be listening to us, then we have to go straight to our states ourselves and make our states listen, because right now it seems the Convention of the States is the only thing that will keep the federal government at bay and ensure that the states still have rights that can't be trampled on. All right, my brother, that's going to wrap up tonight's show. So next Thursday, we will be talking about a convention of states. I'm going to try and have Mike Arnold on with us. Again, he's the director. Let me go back to that because I don't want to chop his title up. Massachusetts State Director for the Convention of States. So look forward to that. Please join us next Thursday for our show on the Convention of States. And Roderick, let people know how they can contact you on social networks.
Yeah, on social media, you can find me at my government name, as I like to call it, Roderick Threats, RODERICKTHREATS. You can also find me on Red Elephant under UTTPP Rod. You can find me there, and you can also find me on your favorite podcast platform, the Black Patriot Show. You can find me there. And we look forward to talking to you, networking with you. And if you have any questions, definitely reach out to me or Mr. James Chief over here. And we'll definitely get your questions answered or point you in the right direction or towards people that know the information.
Without a doubt. And you can reach me on Twitter at The Chief Report. More favorably, contact me on Red Elephant rdelephant.com. I'm under James Chief on Red Elephant, and you can always come to thechiefreport.com and listen to the podcast. They play 24 hours a day. I have podcasts with Roderick Threets, Hudge Bailey Jr., I have podcasts with myself naturally, and this week I will also be adding some podcasts by Wayne Dupree of The Wayne Dupree Show. So definitely come to thechiefreport.com and get that information. And that ends this episode of The Chief Report. Everyone stay safe. God bless you all.
Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief is a snowflake-free Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief is a snowflake-free Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief is a snowflake-free Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief is a snowflake-free. It's like I get premonitions that spit 'em, vocals is wicked. Why the Chief Report? Because I'm never bullshitting. Commie cracks is on my nerves. I'm pulling off from the curve. My fingers I give a middle. I know, so absurd. Media ain't worried about them. They better be peeping Chief. My stories be days ahead, researching while they sleep. My Twitter be blowing up because I be speaking truth. Can also translate it through the mic in this booth. My homies still thugging, cause some of them still struggling. Democrats pimp the hood, turn me to a black Republican. Street soldier and ghetto vet, learn to straddle the fence. Ripping Indiana, and yep, I'm rocking with pins. Now I come to intercept media misinformation and lies told from that commie crack plantation. It's the Chief Report. Come and get baptized in the truth and let it loose and open some eyes. Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief is a snowflake-free Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief.
Make up
Snowflake-free zone. Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief is a snowflake-free Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief is a snowflake-free Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief is a snowflake-free Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief Report, the Chief is a snowflake-free. It's like I get reminiscent.
What's going on, everybody? This is your boy James Chief, and I'm back at you with the Chief Report. Today, we have a pretty special show for you. We have a guest that you all are familiar with. Tricia Flanagan is on the line. And also, we have Dr. Rabbi Rosenberg on the line with us. He's the creator of Exodus Now, which is a new movement that is encouraging the Jewish Democrats to cross over and join the Republican Party. Now, a little bit about Dr. Bernhard H. Rosenberg. He received his Bachelor of Arts, cum laude in speech, Masters of Science, Doctorate of Education, and ordination from Yeshiva University in New York. Dr. Rosenberg also possesses a Master of Arts degree in speech from the City University of New York and a Doctor of Divinity degree from the Jewish Theological Seminar in New York. Currently, Dr. Rosenberg is a professor at Yeshiva University in New York and Rutgers University, the State University of New Jersey, where he specializes in educating students in the methods of public speaking. Dr. Rosenberg is rabbi of Congregation Beth El Edison, located in New Jersey. He is often heard on national radio, makes frequent appearances on television programs, and writes for numerous periodicals. Dr. Rosenberg is the author of Theological and Halachic Reflections of the Holocaust, a guide for the Jewish mourner contemplating the Holocaust, what the Holocaust means to me, teenagers speak out, and thoughts on the Holocaust, where was God, where was man? So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tricia Flanagan and Dr. Bernhard H. Rosenberg. How you guys doing today?
Thank you for having me on.
Hey, thank you for joining.
Yeah, it's an honor to be with. It's an honor to be with both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you guys are on. I thank you, Tricia, for setting up this interview. So, Tricia, the audience is pretty familiar with you, but not so much Rabbi Rosenberg. So why don't you take a couple of minutes to give the listeners a few details about who you are?
The reason Trish and I got together on this project is because she knows my love for the state of Israel, and I am a child of Holocaust survivors. I was born in a displaced persons camp. So anything dealing with anti-Semitism, the Holocaust, or Israel is very close to my heart. The Democratic Party, and we have Democrats online, we're not talking about you're individuals, but the party itself seems to have gone to the left. And that's why I endorsed our president when he first started in the primaries. I was Rabbi Patron, in fact, because I knew that he was going to support the state of Israel and have the Jerusalem be the capital. I was correct in that assumption. What's happening with the Democratic Party, and again, not the Democrat individual, is we have a lot of anti-Semites, and they've been hitting the press almost daily. We have people that hate Israel, and they would love to see the Palestinians destroy Israel and drive all the Jews into the sea. That's not my type of party. So I left the Democratic Party and joined the Republican Party because of President Trump. And Trish is excellent in what she does, so we combined, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, good deal. Now, how did you become aware of Rabbi Rosenberg, Tricia?
So it was interesting that it was serendipitous, but I agree with the rabbi that when he and I spoke, neither one of us believes in coincidence. And so I had seen during the government shutdown, Rabbi Rosenberg was instrumental in helping the workers who were not receiving a paycheck. And I saw on his Facebook post that he was organizing a kosher meal program to help those kosher members of the community who wanted to, who needed kosher meals and who were not receiving a paycheck. And Rabbi Rosenberg was working with a number of delis to make sure that there were discounts or perhaps even donated meals. And I think, Rabbi, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you were able to secure 40,000 plus kosher meals for these communities. And when I saw that heart, and I think I've shared perhaps on your program, and I've been very active in the evangelical community, working with the Jewish community, particularly with Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein, who was a colleague of Rabbi Rosenberg's. I've been honored to be both at Jacob and in Abraham, a member of the International Federation of Christians and Jews. And so this was a cause that was near and dear to my heart. And when I saw Dr. Rosenberg affecting that, I said, what can I do to help? And we began a dialogue, and I think we became fast friends. And then in discussing this exodus from the Democrat Party, I believe that this is the next wave of the walkaway movement, and I think that this is such an influential cohort, such an instrumental group that will help affect the 2020 election. It was a natural fit, and it was something that we began discussing and began an allegiance toward that goal.
Okay, good deal. Let's not use the walkaway movement because Brandon Strzok, he's already had a couple of issues with people trying to mix in his movement, and we want both movements to stay on their own so there's no confusion with the listeners.
Right.
Rabbi Rosenberg, now, when did you start the Exodus Now movement, which, if I'm correct, it's a movement to encourage the Jewish Democrat population to move to the Republican Party? When did you start?
You're correct, except we broadened it. I've noticed that some other group is copying us with regard to trying to get Jewish people, especially the Orthodox, to move the needle towards the Republicans. We're going to take this further. It's not only to move the needle for Jewish people, for people of all faiths. And the rabbi who just passed away was a dear friend of mine. He was a colleague of mine in school. So we're going to take it a step further. Okay. And we basically just started it. This is the brainchild of Tricia. I'm basically a mouthpiece. She's really good at organization, and we're going to take this as far as we can.
Okay, so because, religion is under attack in America today and across the globe. Christianity is under attack. The Jewish people are under attack. What in particular were you seeing out of the Democrat Party, both of you? What were you guys seeing?
Well, first of all, rabbis are afraid to say this, but, I know people that are of the Muslim faith, and they're very nice, and they're friends of mine, but then there's these radical Muslims, and they want to destroy Jews, Israel, Christians, fellow Muslims, etc., and they've got mouthpieces now that have been elected. These horrible anti-Semites are all...
Hey y'all, this is your man Roderick, the host of the Black Patriot Show, and you're listening to WHBJ Digital Talk Radio, where we are the media. Keep it locked.
Well, let me say this, and this, I don't care about being popular or whatever. The first thing you got to do is you got to study and understand who you're up against. And you must realize that this is not a religion that you're fighting against. You're fighting against a theopolitical belief system and construct. You're fighting against something that's been doing this thing since 622 AD, 7th century, 1,388 years. You want to dig up Charles Martel and ask him why he was fighting the Muslim army at the Battle of Tours in 732. You want to ask the Venetian fleet at Lepanto why they were fighting a Muslim fleet in 1571. You want to ask the Christian, the Germanic and Austrian knights why they were fighting at the gates of Vienna in 1683. You want to ask people what happened at Constantinople and why today is called Istanbul, because they lost that fight in 1453. You need to get into the Quran. You need to understand their precepts. You need to read the Surah. You need to read the Hadiths. And then you can really understand this is not a perversion. They are doing exactly what this book says. But, all right. And I want to close by saying this. And I think we have said this all through this morning so far. Until you get principled leadership in the United States of America that is willing to say that, we will continue to chase our tail, because we will never clearly define who this enemy is and then understand their goals and objectives, which is on any jihadist website, and then come up with the right and proper goals and objectives to not only secure our republic, but to secure Western civilization. Thank you.
Come on, Misha. What? Do you believe in government assistance?
What?
Well, I've got something to say about it. And it goes something like this, Blair. Misha takes his girl out for free. Don't need no cash to eat. He pays with EBT order. People get so jealous and mad. Americans make fuss cause their taxes go to us. It's bad, so bad. We got our Lexus in parking lot. It does not make a difference if it's legal or hot. Most people have jobs, but we do not all day. We drink and smoke pot. 420. Oh, it's so unfair. Living on welfare. We don't pay tax, and we really don't care. Living on welfare.
Sasha's girl is eating all day. She loves government cheese. Tell me, what does that bitch weigh?
Oi, блядь. In USA we'll never be poor. When we run out of ham, we call up Uncle Sam for more. More ham. Please, пожалуйста. We made our green cards in Photoshop. It does not make a difference if they're bloody or cropped. So how to spend all the money we got? Oi, bled. We'll give it a shot. Oh, we're halfway there. Oh, living on welfare, expensive suntans and grooming chest hair. Oh, living on welfare, living on welfare.
Solo player. This guy's not so bad. I'm glad we picked him.
He's not good.
Busted.
Oh, if we're pulled over, if we get stopped, we'll use your tax dollars to pay off the cops. Oh, it's so unfair. Oh, living on welfare, support our lifestyle, we're grateful, I swear. Oh, living on welfare, oh, it's so unfair.
Living on the welfare. I'm going to pick up my welfare check. BRB.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism. And what is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation. Well, isn't this the liberal philosophy? The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back. Get out of my pocket. And let me have more control of my own destiny.
Their 2020 platform sounds identical to policies already tried and now failing in the collapsed socialist state of Venezuela.
You know, it's funny, sometimes American journalists talk about how bad a country is because people are lining up for food. That's a good thing.
I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance. So for people out there who like their insurance, well, they don't get to keep it.
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
Abolish ICE. It's a growing call from Democrats to get rid of the agency that arrests and removes illegal immigrants in the U.S.
I think we should get rid of ICE. We need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Why is it good for us to pay for the health care bills of people who snuck in here against our law?
It's good for people who are in our country, who are contributing to this country's success.
Or does it also apply to, I don't know, gang members or vagrants? I think they were covered too, weren't they?
These hot-button issues like free college, free healthcare, once thought to be radical, appear to be the starting line in this Democratic primary.
The three core demands of the National Day of Action are free public college, a cancellation of student debt, and a $15 an hour minimum wage for people who work on the campus.
And how's that going to be paid?
Great question. I mean, so...
Do you call yourself a radical?
Yeah, if that's what radical means, call me a radical.
Nancy Pelosi. Do you recognize her as the leader for the House Democrats?
Of course.
We, as you are aware, we are diligent.
I think one way you get rid of Trump is a crashing economy. So please, bring on the recession. Sorry if that hurts people.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, you get out and you tell them they're not welcome.
When they go low, we kick them.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar under attack for anti-Semitic tweets.
Can you respond to that?
No, thank you.
You used the term the occupation of Palestine. What did you mean by that? I think what I meant is that are increasing. I am not the expert.
They are the future face of the Democratic Party. They are not only anti-Israel, but often that anti-Zionism morphs into anti-Semitism.
Either the Klansman or the guy in blackface is right now the Democratic governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam.
Northam's nickname was a racial slur.
They called me Coon Man. I did participate in a dance contest in which I darkened my face as part of a Michael Jackson costume. I actually won the contest because I had learned how to do the moonwalk. My wife says inappropriate circumstances.
Tonight!
Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts with a DNA test to prove her Native American ancestry.
Her DNA test claiming she's part Native American appears to be backfiring.
Tonight, the leaders of the Cherokee Nation are speaking out against Senator Elizabeth Warren's campaign video touting her Native American ancestry.
Have you considered dropping out of the race?
You're talking about zero carbon emissions, no use of fossil fuels within 12 years.
That is the goal. It's ambitious. And
how is that possible? You're talking about everybody having to drive an electric car?
Admitting in earlier drafts that, quote, we aren't sure that we'll be able to fully get rid of farting cows and airplanes that fast.
I really don't like their policy of taking away your car, of taking away your airplane flights, of let's hop a train. You're not allowed to own cows anymore. You know, there are a lot of problems.
It was stunning how quickly some Democrats jumped on this proposal.
Oh, it's impractical. Oh, it's too expensive. Keeping track of Democrats who might be driving a hard left, and a lot of them happy to do so.
Socialism is apparently becoming mainstream.
America will never be a socialist country. Never. We're born free, we will live free, and we will die free.
This has been a great movement. They try like hell. They cannot stand what we've done. But we're doing the right thing. And I will never, ever, ever let you down.
We will make America wealthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again.
We have a special announcement to make tonight. We are very pleased to announce that we are contributing to a new venture on Spreaker.com. It's called...
You're listening to WHBJ Digital Talk from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
It's produced by the godfather of News Talk podcasts, namely Hutch Bailey Jr. You can find out more on Spreaker.com, and we will put the links to that on our site at aradio.wordpress.com. This channel is soon to be 24 hours, and we are proud and humble to contribute to it in some small way. It's not just talk, it's life, sport, and everything. Join us and many others, and join the movement. Spread the word.
Would you like to voice your patriotism without the threat of being censored or shadow banned? Would you like to contribute to wounded veterans but don't know how? Would you like to communicate with like-minded conservatives without being trolled? If you answered yes, then Red Elephant, rdelephant.com is for you. Red Elephant is the new social media platform that will not censor or shadow ban you, and a portion of your sign-up fee goes directly to the Wounded Warriors Project. rdelephant.com.
I just think he ought to be honest with the American people and try to win as the real Mitt Romney.
Meet the real Mitt Romney.
Who is the real Romney?
No one really knows who the real Mitt Romney is.
He's an enigma, and he's a dad and a family man.
Who is the real Romney?
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Can I have your attention, please? Can I have your attention, please? Will the real Mitt Romney please stand up? I repeat, will the real Mitt Romney please stand up? We're going to have a problem here.
Y'all act like you haven't seen a Mormon before. George, down on the floor. I'm not concerned about the very poor. Got it wrong. Sorry, that's not what I meant. I want every American to be in the top 1%. I'm really named Willard. That's my first name. I'm not looking for a colony on the moon, just for someone to blame. I like being able to fire people.
I'm Newt Gingrich.
You're fired.
I'm Rick Santorum, and I'm fired.
Boom, boom, boom. Conservative women.
Love Mitt Romney.
And I love cars. I love lakes. I'm running for office, for Pete's sake. With regards to abortion, pro-life, pro-choice, I firmly believe in my own singing voice. For purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain.
Where are we at, John?
With regards to abortion, you can choose your own adventure. It's a Republican dimension. And I'm more concerned about the banks. They're unable to lend. Corporations are people, my friend. My dog is on the roof. My dog is on the roof.
Who let the dogs out?
Understand, I'm an exception to the Obama
Contraception.
not a vulture. I'm an eagle. I'm going to get my lawn cut by illegals. There will be an influx of Hispanic voters in trucks. Look, if you don't believe...
I'll tell you what, $10,000?
Well, I made a lot of money. Matter of factually. So I drive a couple of Cadillacs, actually. I have emotion and passion. That's a joke, for the record.
But if you want
the soul of America
restored...
Thank you. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.